Was that? All right. I was going to do the good evening, but the good evening, I think, translates badly into the audio version of these podcasts because I oftentimes convert the Sunday night streams into podcast format, which you can find on Podbean, Apple, Google thingy things, and Stitcher, and a bunch of other stuff. Now, I don't want to have the same mistake that I did yesterday and miss the actual vote. But for those of you who don't know, the future of Canada, in my humble opinion, at least the next step of the future in Canada, because I thought it's going to go downhill quick if this actually gets past the House of Commons, the vote, which it did, the Emergencies Act declaration. The process is that within 7 sitting days, the declaration of the Emergencies Act needed to be ratified, both by the House of Commons and the Senate. I was stupidly optimistic, naively optimistic. I was an idiot in thinking that the members of Parliament at the House of Commons would actually do the right thing and shut this down like the abusive power grab and the unconstitutional flex that it is. But lo and behold, yesterday, 185 to 151, pretty much along party lines, the Liberals invoking the Emergencies Act to freeze bank accounts with no due process, seize trucks, sell them with no due process, put people in jail with no bail. The Liberals, this is what it means to be liberal these days. I have a feeling in 100 years from now, the term liberal is going to have the same connotation that certain terms today have today, but didn't necessarily at the time. And the so-called New Democratic Party, or the New Dictatorship Party, voted along the lines. Jagmeet Singh, in all his infinite wisdom, in his argumentation, said that he can't believe the abysmal response by the government to this crisis. So let's give the government a raise, right? Your response has been terrible, negligent, incompetent, divisive. So let's give you all the powers in the world that any supervillain would want to have by granting you the Emergencies Act that you've declared. Oh, okay, they're back. So let's just go. We got a bunch to talk about. The bail, some rumors about YouTube channels being taken down, some rumors about people's bank accounts being seized, and Tamara Litch and Pat King being denied bail. Okay, but first, let's bring this in. How do I bring up the volume on this? Okay, we're gonna bring up the volume. I can't bring up the volume more than I can bring up the volume.
The government.
It's on.
To my mind, it was not a peaceful tone. And as we know, in Coots, firearms were found.
Unrelated to the protest, a wells away. Lie.
Parliament Hill and downtown Ottawa, they do continue elsewhere. And we have all heard of the potential of their popping up in different locations.
Potential of future protests.
Today, we received a situation advisory.
Tell me if the audio is good. I'm going to talk over her. If anybody wants to hear this unedited, I'll post the link.
In which he was visiting. And an hour later, a hold and secure advisory was announced at 1 Wellington and the Senate of Canada.
Oh, it's just a convenient news article that occurred today. There was a shutdown of a shopping mall.
Park in downtown Winnipeg has drawn concern of many, including our mayor.
Concern. Now the justification for the Emergencies Act is concern for potential future protests.
And if it was summer with my windows open, I too
turn mic.
The noise and the trucks.
Viva for PM volume is great. Viva, good. They want to convert the Emergencies Act into a preventative measure.
They have a fear of going out and have seen their neighborhood filled with trucks. I have had many calls from my neighbors about the anxiety
you are way too loud.
Have. So the concerns do continue. What we have seen transpire in Ottawa since January 28th has morphed into what I see as a very misguided use of legal right to assembly, and indeed it has become a lawless occupation, which rendered the many Ottawa citizens who live downtown and in the market virtual prisoners in their homes.
Oh, prisoners in their homes.
Incessant noise, threats,
maybe
the pervading
lie.
smell of diesel and a fear
Maybe.
of going out,
Lie.
especially when wearing their masks.
Lie.
I have heard of parents in different parts of Ottawa being in parks with their children and being harassed for
Lie.
wearing
Lie.
masks.
Lie. Absolute
Citizens of
lies.
Ottawa missed work. Businesses were shut. Millions of dollars were lost. And I could go on and we could talk about the other sites as well.
Millions of dollars
And
were
I'm
lost
sure
because they
we are
refused to
all
discuss,
aware
dragged
of the
this on for 3
harassment
weeks,
of our
then
staff,
brought in
especially those of
the
visual
non-military
diversities,
military.
And as was so aptly
Lies.
noted by Senator Moody, and I would like to say a thank you and a concern.
I want to tell
for
everyone
those
why
who
it's a
did
lie
this.
about the harassment for the face
I have
masks.
heard
I've
my
said it
colleagues'
before.
opinions
People wearing
on the
face
enactment
masks
of the
to cover their
Emergency
faces
Measures
so they
Act,
wouldn't be
and while I
identified for
appreciate
participating.
the concerns
Everyone
of my
understood that.
colleagues, I have
Lies.
concluded that given this unique
Misguided use
situation,
of protest.
the act is necessary at this time. We have all heard the arguments regarding whether the threshold for implementing the act has been met. I believe that threshold has been met.
Then you
Those
have very,
arguments will
very
be
bad
ongoing
judgment,
for a
ma'am.
very long time after this situation has passed. And indeed, we all know there are many such legal arguments playing out as we speak. My reasons for supporting the use of this instrument
Let's hear it. Let's hear
are
it.
not complicated.
I know that because they don't
We
exist.
need to uphold civic responsibility.
That's what the law is for, not the Emergencies Act.
Fought for and died for by our parents and grandparents in the past and by our military members today.
They need to suppress your freedoms
Those
to protect your freedoms.
come with responsibilities.
Ah, you didn't
as
do it
Senator
properly.
Cordy
Shame
said
on you,
earlier.
bad protesters. You didn't do it the way we told you to.
I believe that the objectives of the Emergency
Yeah, let's hear
Measures
it.
Act have been adapted to respond to the troubles that confront us today.
They've been adapted, meaning they're no longer the
Whether
objectives
they
of the
are
Emergencies
targeted
Act.
to specifically deal with those who occupied our capital,
Targeted to
who
deal with those who occupied the
constituted
capital.
a
That's what
threat
the
for our
law is
international
for,
trade,
not the
and
Emergencies
therefore
Act.
for our economy, under the cover of truckers who the vast majority of which are opposed to these troubles.
I think the truckers can speak for themselves, but that's
I do
irrelevant.
not believe we should be subject to foreign donors funding civil unrest in Canada.
Ah,
I quite
except unless
frankly
it's the
am upset
WEF, then
by
they're
the
fine
number
with
of
that.
people who are part of this occupation who have come from beyond our borders. And I am very aware of the many American license plates that were here in Ottawa and are currently in Winnipeg.
That's interesting. I didn't notice very many. I didn't look specifically. I didn't notice very many.
To defend that sovereignty. This, for me, is a basic concept.
They're using the Emergencies
The
Act
measures
to
expire
protect
in 30
sovereignty
days.
as
The
if to
act
pretend that
is
people
subject
crossing
to
the border
Charter
to
of Rights
protest
and Freedoms,
is an attack on
and
sovereignty.
Parliament
And they're
will
not there
have
anymore, by the way. They're
ultimate
gone.
say in approving implementation and repeal of the Act while monitoring its use. These measures seem a reasonable response to what has become an unreasonable situation for many Canadians.
I don't know, Aidan.
Colleagues, the spreading of disinformation amongst our population regarding public health measures during a pandemic, which has taken the lives of so many, is very concerning.
It's taken the lives of so many because their dear
all been
leader
touched
donated
by
our
those who have
PPE
died
to
or
China in
been
February.
terribly ill with this
80% of the
virus,
deaths in long-term
and we
healthcare
can't
facilities
count the
who didn't
number
have the
of
resources to
families
deal with this
who have
because of these
had their
incompetent
lives
people.
changed irrevocably. Not to be vaccinated at this point, despite the scientifically provenness effectiveness of vaccine, is extremely disappointing.
Oh.
The
Emergencies Act.
anti-vaccine
Emergencies
rhetoric,
Act.
which has been shared online for any variety of unscientific reasons, has become tremendous.
It results in a new election being called or triggered.
There is no easy solution to this, and it will remain an obstacle to our recovery. That is unfortunate.
No easy answer. So let's invoke
This
the
country
Emergencies
is
Act
very close
to
reaching
prevent
the
future
finishing line
protests.
regarding the virus. We have come to this point through following public health guidelines, getting vaccinated, staying home when requested to, missing family time,
Staying home when requested to. That's called house arrest, ma'am. That's unconstitutional.
Health and well-being.
Staying home when requested
We have
to.
come too
Otherwise, you
far
get a
to make
$6,000
these
fine or
sacrifices
imprisoned
not pay off
or
for
hauled
more
off to a
normal
quarantine
times,
facility.
which we all want and need.
It's diluted and
This is not
delusional.
the time to shut down trade as the convoy forced. This is not the time to occupy the nation's capital.
They're not doing
as
it anymore.
has.
They're not doing it
This
anymore.
is not the time to make life worse for everyone here as was done.
Even if it,
especially
as was
when
done,
we were
not doing
all
it
so
anymore.
close to the
Emergencies Act
endgame.
does not apply.
These
Period.
actions are not helpful.
Yeah, oh, they're not
They are
helpful.
preoccupying us all
Preoccupying
when we
us.
should be working together to restore our economy, our lives.
Can you believe this
and
rubbish?
Not be divided.
Not be divided.
shouldn't have
Those
to-
people are putting us all at
I
risk.
cannot help but end on this note.
Oh, end,
Thank
please.
you
Please
to
end.
the vast majority of Canadians who followed the guidelines throughout this pandemic. Thank you to those who made the sacrifice
What sacrifice?
to get us to where we are now.
Oh, what's that? So you want to fire the ones that
Thank
made the
you
sacrifice, like the
to those
truckers?
Canadians that put their neighbor first.
Tell me how they put their neighbors first, ma'am. And that's not what the Emergencies Act
Got
is for.
vaccinated.
Oh,
And to
okay.
all those who went to work, kept our hospitals and health systems going. in
The same
most
ones they just
difficult
fired
times.
for
Those who kept
choosing
food on our
what to do
tables
with their
and
own
our
body.
children learning,
The truckers.
either at school or at home.
The same
I
ones who are
really
getting
want to
fired for
thank our
choosing not to
frontline
do certain
workers
things
who
to their
cared
body.
for us through this ordeal. We are
These
indebted to you.
people call themselves
I
liberals.
also want to pay a heartfelt tribute to the police these past days who undertook a complex initiative with care, honesty, transparency, and
Don't know what that means.
professionalism. I applaud the many forces from various parts of the country which have joined together to make our capital ours again. While sad that we need this motion, I am supporting it.
Yeah, that's because you don't understand what the law was about. They want to use this Emergencies Act as a prospective
debate,
prevention
Senator
of
Dow.
future possibilities.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Who's this?
Colleagues, as we consider the Emergency Act currently before the Senate,
Who's this?
it is clear that the federal government, which invoked the Act, and the Parliament of Canada, which is voting on its passage or rejection, was forced into this position by the inaction of the Ottawa City Council. I had the pleasure of living
Interesting.
in Ottawa.
Where's this going?
1990s.
Does everybody want to
Human
listen to
rights
this?
here,
Let me know in the
access
chat.
here,
We can
sent
get
our
into the
children to
subject
school
matter,
here.
or we could listen to this and I can
can
rant
tell
and
you,
rave like a lunatic.
Ottawa is a lovely city, and that is why what was allowed to happen here over the last few weeks is so disappointing.
Did he go? Did you
I
go,
hope
sir?
the citizens of Ottawa pay close
Someone send him the
attention
link to my
to
live
who they are
streams.
electing to the city council this fall. That they elect
Don't worry about
city
me, DD.
councilors
Thank you.
who have the ability to learn about the Police Act, who show the ability to grow into the job and responsibility that it entails. I hope they elect individuals who are interested in putting in the work to do the job, rather than those more interested in the personal
Chat's going too fast, even in
or
20
their
seconds
media
slow mode.
profile.
Yes, we want to listen to it. Good. Yes,
Our
fine.
national
Good.
capital needs a much improved and substantially more competent city council. We don't want another dysfunctional Ottawa City Council putting our country in this position again.
So they wanted them to crack down harder
Question,
earlier on a
colleagues,
peaceful protest.
Before us is as follows.
Okay.
Was there a lack of proper laws resulting in the needs for the Emergency Act?
Nope.
Or was there a lack of enforcement of existing laws?
Yes, this guy makes a little
Hands-off
sense now.
Treatment of the protesters here in Ottawa motivated others to take similar actions as blockades and protests starting popping up at borders crossings across Canada.
Okay, this guy's sort of going both
After
ways
reading
here.
the act, I had a number of questions.
Okay, he's voting
First and
against.
foremost of which, is the Emergency Act necessary?
Well, isn't
or
that
is it
special?
an overreach? The main question and the heart of the matter is the section of the act that states that to declare an emergency,
National
requires a
emergency.
situation that, and let me quote from the
National
act,
emergency for which the
cannot be
resources
effectively
are
dealt with
of the
under
province.
any other laws of Canada.
Okay, this
End
guy
quote.
sort of gets it, but I disagree with a lot of his other stuff.
Unfortunately, that question may be impossible to answer, at least for the time being, simply because we don't know what we don't know.
You don't know that you have no
Our
loitering
security
laws.
and
You don't know
intelligence
that you have no
agencies
parking laws.
discovered
You don't know that
about
you
who
have
is behind
no mischief
these
laws
very
already on the books that you could have
well-organized
enforced for
protests.
3 weeks if you thought that was what
Were
was going
foreign
on.
governments involved in providing support or funding
Will do.
in order to generate unrest and divisions in our country?
The hair looks like the Avatar tonight, like
When I worked
really.
in the Prime Minister's office, I spent a good deal of time working on national security issues after the September 2001 first attack.
Can you understand?
on the
Imagine
United
this.
States.
What laws did they not have
can
that they could have
assume the
enforced to
federal
prevent this
government
if they wanted to
assessed the
end it on
threats
day one? And
and
what
acted
resources
accordingly
did they lack that they
when they
required the
declared a
feds to
public
step in
order
for?
emergency.
And better yet, what
We will be able
national
to
emergency
confirm that
was there?
assumption or determine that the government
It's
made a
fiction.
mistake
It's political
when we
fiction
review
and
the
legal
implementation
fiction.
of the Emergency Act over the next few months. However, the seizures of weapons at the Coutts border
Oh,
crossing
what
in
a
Alberta,
convenient thing that they have to
along
rely
with
on
the
this.
laying of charges involving uttering threats, possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose.
We'll get to it.
and
We'll get to this
conspiracy
rumor,
to commit murder
this fact.
are obviously extremely serious.
What's amazing, it's as though they think that in
Colleagues,
Ottawa or
we
elsewhere,
must
there has
remember
never
that the
been
people who
crime.
protested
So
for
any
3
crime that
weeks
occurs during the protest
represent but a
occurs
small
because of the
portion
protest.
the population
The
of
Coutts
Canada.
weapons cache
The
was
silent
totally
majority of
unrelated from my
Canadians are
understanding.
those who are fully
And distance,
vaccinated.
not at the
Over
blockade
85%
itself,
of
but
eligible Canadians.
these people have got their
The
talking
silent
points.
majority of Canadians followed public health guidelines. The silent majority of Canadians worked hard to protect their fellow citizens, our seniors.
Okay, which way is this guy going?
Children
He's
under 5,
he's really going both
those
ways
who have
here.
an autoimmune disorder, those for whoever reason cannot receive vaccinations.
No, they're thinking of the.
However, a
Won't
small
someone
group
think
of
of the
fellow
unvaxxed who
citizens
can't get
kept asking,
vaxxed? That's
"What
their
about
argument
me?"
now.
It was all about me, and to heck with everyone else. The current and ongoing.
That's a very
easing
fair and accurate
public health
representation, sir. You
restrictions
understood exactly what
is
the
because
protest was
so many
about.
Canadians
The
have
protest
done
was
and
actually about
continue to do the right
and you
thing.
Canadians and us
We
Canadians.
owe a
That's
debt
what it was
of
about.
gratitude to healthcare workers and public health officials who have guided us through this pandemic. As I stated, because of the failure of early, effective enforcement, the Emergency Act
Truculence
became
on
necessary
Rumble
to
Rants
prevent a
says
well-organized,
transparency equal removing badge
well-funded
numbers and
minority
name tapes from
overthrowing
officers.
all the efforts
And
that the majority
Robert
of Canadians
2091
have
Viva from New
undertaken
Jersey
to
and
help
did
us
some
get
research and
through
found
these
2 names
past
putting big
2
money in elections in
painful
America.
and difficult years of
$410 million. They are not from
I shall
America.
be voting for that.
Their names are.
Thank you,
I won't dox people. Did he say he was supporting it or not? I missed that part. Damn
Senator
it.
McFedrin, on debate.
Did he say he supported it or not, people? I'm sorry. I totally missed it. My goodness. We need more than positive
Your
vibes, but I'll
Honor.
take it. Thank you. Oh,
Just one moment, please.
she's got a hate symbol behind her. This is very dangerous. They might freeze her bank accounts. How dare she? That Canadian flag makes Canadians. That's a
Sorry,
symbol
I
of.
realized that my microphone had been turned down.
It's very important discussion.
Bonsoir, Tanzi. En tant
Good evening. As a
Surpri-
senator from Manitoba, I realize that I am
Hate symbol in the back there.
on an
Okay, let's get it going here, translator. Come on. You're on the spot.
Métis knowledge territory too.
unsurrendered lands of
You
the
notice they have to like
Anishinaabe
speak a
and
little bit in
Algonquin
French
First
just to show
Nations.
Canada that they're somewhat
dois
bilingual,
citer
but
la
then they go right
presse.
back to English.
I would like to quote La Presse
J'aimerais,
from February
oh,
19th.
let's quote La Presse.
There is a right to demonstrate, but not a right to block the heart of the capital and threaten its democratic institutions
When do they threaten the democratic institutions and how?
perturb police operations
Perturb police operations? We were there. I documented it. There was a lane for
By
any emergency
tying
lane
up
open.
911 lines
That-
and endangering the lives of Ottawa citizens.
In-
Some went so far as to put children between the lines of the police and
Oh
demonstrators.
my
They used
God.
their own children as human shields.
All Freedom Convoy protests were ostensibly marked by a January 2022 regulation mandating truckers
Can
and
you believe
essential
this,
workers
Robert? Put their
crossing the
children.
border
When
to
were their
provide
children put in
proof
between?
of
When they were on the
vaccination.
bouncy castles?
But the truth
Oh
is
my
that these
God.
protests are less a reaction to this mandate and more a reflection of the general frustration with the pandemic-related restrictions of the last couple of years.
She can still go the right way, but my
Unfortunately,
goodness, is this
it has
spouting
become
nonsense?
increasingly apparent that these protests have been appropriated by more radical and politicized voices and elements to the disservice of the majority of protesters, and any legitimate debate has been subsumed by polemically divisive populism.
Such
It
as?
is telling
I love how
to
they say
note
populism is a
that
bad
with
thing. Like what the
90%
people
of
want
truck
is bad.
drivers
It's the elite.
vaccinated
No,
against
it's populism
COVID-19,
versus elitism.
according
That's
to
the
the
reality
Canadian
here.
Trucking
And the
Alliance,
elitist here
the
thinks that the
majority of
populace
the
doesn't get to
industry
get their way and
is
doesn't get to
sitting
have their
out
voices
the
heard.
convoy
That's what they're saying.
protest. The Canadian
Put their
Trucking
kids
Alliance
in
and
between.
Alliance
Lie.
Trucking Ontario Association
Dude, I'm
has
not
been
playing the drinking
vocal
game with a lie because I'll be
against the
dead in
convoy
10 minutes.
actions and in favor of government intervention. What's more, even if the government were to immediately lift the federal vaccine mandate for truckers, a parallel U.S. vaccine mandate announced last October
How
for
convenient.
foreign truckers would still keep them from crossing the
Oh,
border.
Emergencies Act,
So,
madam. This is what we're talking about tonight, not policy
for essential
discussions.
workers is clearly symbolic rather than central to these protests.
I'm not slowing chat more than
Something
20 seconds.
else is happening here. I think we can all understand and empathize with the high frustration and uncertainty that many Canadians feel regarding the pandemic.
I don't know that
But
any dogs
let us
got
also
seized. I don't
remember
know that
the
for a fact.
many
I'll have to
more
check that out.
Canadians who have lost 35,000 plus of their families and friends.
80% of which were in long-term healthcare facilities that
Restrictions
died as a
have
result
been
of your
imposed
government's
and then lifted
negligence,
and
ma'am.
raised across the country
Oh, no,
by
no, no, but
federal and
blame the
provincial
disease and don't blame
governments,
your own
and
incompetence.
they haven't always
And then
been
invoke the
effectively
Emergencies Act.
communicated. A more profound impact on our lives than we could have ever imagined. But let's be clear and let's be fair.
Be fair.
Those same
You don't know how to be
restrictions,
fair, and you don't know how to be
clunky,
clear either.
inconvenient, and perhaps from time to time intrusive as they have been, have helped keep this country at our COVID death rate at about 1/3 proportional to the United States. Frustration is real, but so too is science. And the health policy and legislating for the good, the common good, has been relatively successful. As many have voiced already, Canadians have the
Trust the science, by the way. As of March 7, no more face masks in schools, in class, but in the hallways.
Some are large and organized.
I'm allowed back into the
Most of us have
big box stores.
participated
Science
in
changed over the
demonstrations
last
from
month.
time to time. I certainly know my kids grew up from the time they were in strollers being wheeled into demonstrations.
Oh, arrest her,
And
freeze her
those
bank accounts.
Demonstrations were peaceful.
Oh, those were peaceful.
Those
This one wasn't.
demonstrations did not block anybody's right to their life or to health care.
I'm sorry, did she just say that this protest killed people? Healthcare? Lies,
However,
lies, lies.
Jurisprudence has clarified that Section 2C guarantees the right to peaceful assembly.
Did you go to the
It
protest,
does
ma'am?
not protect riots or gatherings that seriously disturb the peace.
Riots or
Furthermore,
gatherings that seriously disturb the peace.
That the right to freedom of assembly, along with freedom of expression,
they're just liars.
Does not
they're just
include
lying.
the right to physically impede or blockade lawful activities.
That's true, and they got an
We
injunction, and it was
recognize
ceased in virtue of the injunction.
To balance our rights and freedoms with the rule of law in our democracy.
I saw that.
Is the essence of Section 1 of the Canadian Charter of Rights.
The Emergencies Act was not intended to enforce the Charter, ma'am. The Emergencies Act was intended to respond to a national emergency that compromised the integrity of the country, for which the provinces lack resources to address it without the feds. They're going to use the Emergencies Act to enforce the law now.
That has today
without the oversight of the courts.
More than 5.9 million people. In a Canadian context, 45,000 Canadians died.
We heard that already.
World War II.
Oh, sorry. No, sorry. I'm sorry. That's
and
World War II.
More than
not
35,000 Canadians have died in this pandemic so far, with more dying every day.
People die, ma'am. There's death that occurs on a yearly basis. So.
Good. This is an issue.
God,
peace,
this is atrocious.
And good government, as is set
I hope people are watching
this.
These people represent us.
Yes, there have been limits placed on Canadians from the mandatory.
Do you know when anybody says how many people died in the U.S. today from COVID?
On mobility,
about 8,000 people die a day on
But that
average
has
in the
been to
United
reduce
States.
the spread,
If everyone's
not
infected with
eradicate the virus,
coronavirus, with
because
the
we know that
Omicron,
isn't possible.
just do some math
It's
there,
been
since they
done
don't
for the
yet know
common good.
between dying with
It's
versus
been
dying of.
done so that health workers can do their work.
Oh, have they
for
not been able to do their
people
work?
among us who need health care. We have seen incontrovertible evidence that a combination of medical and technical interventions and equally imperative individual conscious behavioral changes are required to effectively counter this or indeed any pandemic.
I don't know what you just said.
The impositions of COVID-related restrictions and health regulations are intended to minimize illness and death in the maximum number of Canadians.
They're intended to. They're intended to.
What vaccinations have done.
How is this turning into an advertisement for vaccinations?
None of us has the right.
This is about the Emergencies Act.
As though it
My
isn't
God, they're
important
just
for
sitting there.
someone else to protect their health. This is a balancing of rights and privileges.
I'm sorry.
And a weighing
I'm sorry. Privileges?
of responsible and proportionate
did she just say privileges?
to respond
rights
to
and
this
privileges?
crisis.
Tell me what the privileges
And in
are.
my
It seems that you
opinion,
might have confounded
the
rights with
declaration
privileges.
on February 14th fit within the criteria necessary under the Emergencies Act on February 14th. When Alberta dropped virtually all health restrictions on July 1st, 2021, the cases skyrocketed.
Yeah, okay, of course.
Albertans were dying from COVID-19 at more than 3 times the Canadian average. The province was in crisis because the provincial government did not maintain health restrictions that could have.
Can you believe how they're confounding the debate tonight? This is what drives me nuts about law, is when they confound the debate, and it gets so far removed from the actual core question that there's no bringing it back. We've entered the realm of La La Land.
Actually has little to do with the federal government.
This debate has nothing to do with vaccines. It has nothing to do with health measures. It has to do with whether or not the Emergencies Act declaration
and the federal government
was lawfully done, was appropriate, and should be ratified.
An analog to this current debate. Whether the invocation of this Emergencies Act is another form of unreasonable and therefore imposition of limits on our Charter of Freedoms.
Oh, damn, we just missed that point.
In my opinion, it does meet that test for proportionality and reasonableness as set out so clearly in the Oakes test by the Supreme Court of Canada. Specific to the invocation of the Emergencies Act, I am convinced by the evidence that these protests move beyond peaceful assembly, and the open demonstrations of citizens have been unfortunately hijacked by radical elements that have been using these demonstrations and continue to use fomenting the movement to ferment, infiltrate, spread, and move into areas that are potentially far more sinister.
Potential. Let's just even assume she's right. Potentiality was not the criteria for invoking the Emergencies Act. It was a real emergency, not the potential for anything. Real, that the province lacks the resources to respond to. Real.
In Coutts, Alberta,
this is atrocious. This is atrocious.
The documented
I don't know how long this goes on for, but
active and former military, police, as well as individuals known to have deep connections to extremist groups.
Oh, such as?
Publicly proclaiming that they want a racial war. Publicly proclaiming that if there isn't this kind of insurrection, then, quote, we will all soon be forced to speak Hebrew, approximate quote.
Oh, nothing better than a quote and then
prepared by Canada's Integrated Terrorism Assessment Centre, ITAC, are pertinent to this discussion. They warned in late January that it was likely that extremists were involved, and they said that the scale of the protests could yet pose, quote, a trigger point, an opportunity for potential lone actor attackers to conduct a terrorist attack.
The protest is over. Whatever that idiotic prediction never happened anyhow.
83 of the Criminal Code.
Oh, sorry.
Terrorism is an act that is committed, quote, in whole or in part with the intention of intimidating the public or a segment of the public regard to its security, including its economic security, or compelling a person, a government, or a domestic or an international organization to do or to refrain from doing any act.
Well, but hey, by the way,
quote,
everyone appreciate this.
could we think
All
for a
forms of
moment about
protest
the
are now
entire
terrorism.
closure
Just so you should know.
of the Rideau
Just so you
Shopping
liberals
Centre
and
in
you
downtown
unionized
Ottawa
workers and
as
anybody
just
else who
one
doesn't like the
example.
truckers, all form of
It
protest
is
now is
understood that
officially
demonstrations
terrorism by
always
this
tend to
definition.
attract
This
some
is
extreme individuals and groups.
there, it just happened.
But
It
the
just happened.
apparent level of coordination and integration, as reported by ITAF,
If this is
and
approved, it will not
observed
be
by
rescinded
other
in 30
policing and
days.
security agencies,
I don't know what's going to be left of
indicates
Canada in
clearly
30
that this
days.
occupation has moved far from the original intentions of many of its participants.
Oh, what does she know about the
Extremist
intentions of the
attitudes have
original
instead
participants?
infiltrated, derailed, and co-opted the original voice and intent of the majority of the protesters. This irreparably changed the convoy from a peaceful assembly to something calculated and dangerous.
Something calculated and dangerous. Liar.
On some oversight and
Just liars. Boldface or bald, whatever it is, liars.
In particular, Section 59, which provides for only 20 members of parliament and 10 senators to come together for an early end to the use of the declaration under the Emergencies Act. And
this is the end of Canada, by the way, in any meaningful sense. You are now living under a government. It hasn't been voted on yet.
And which
it
I
still
hope
has to
we
go
will
through the courts.
ensure that the parliamentary inquiry.
Everybody should
will
appreciate
study.
these are the
One,
people
the
representing
presence and apparent
Canadians.
organizing leadership of active and former Canadian Armed Forces members, as well as active and former police.
I'm afraid to. I'm
Two,
afraid to.
The presence, positioning, and safety of children.
Hold on a second. Hold on. I want to bring up.
And how this affected policing decisions and actions. 3, the double standard in how the police have responded to the actions of this group compared to a very different use of force and arrests at some Indigenous and climate justice protests, or indeed has been mentioned at the Toronto G20 summit. Lastly, the legitimacy, efficacy, and precision of employing financial seizures as a reasonable alternative to violence or more aggressive coercive.
Did she not see the cops kneeing them like they were turkeys being softened up for Thanksgiving?
The fact that of the rather astonishing
now the threat of police violence is going to be the justification for freezing your bank accounts with no lawful court order. Well, at least we didn't beat the crap out of you. Can you believe this?
And the likelihood that this contributed to the relatively peaceful process that we saw happen in the last number of days.
Oh, the relatively peaceful end. Did you see it?
Excuse me, Senator McFedrin. Are you just about to wind up?
Yeah, you just about made everyone's ears bleed with rubbish.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. With grave concern about extension of the extraordinary powers, I note that the Emergency Act does not suspend civil liberties or charter rights.
It already has due process, enjoyment of property, peaceful assembly. It already has. Saying it hasn't is an idiotic buffoonery of a lie.
Here. The Act requires that the declaration must be tabled in Parliament within 7 sitting days of Cabinet issuing its declaration. So in closing, may I just say,
please.
I will vote in favor.
You have desecrated your country, ma'am.
Emergencies Act, and I will also work with anyone who wishes across all boundaries to gather together the 20 members of Parliament and the 10 senators to begin the process of ending these extraordinary powers.
So I vote for the powers so that I can work to end the powers. I vote for the powers so that I can work together to end the powers. This is people deciding on whether or not to give themselves a raise. That's what's happening right now. A raise at the expense of our constitutional rights.
Believe it? Okay. Sorry, Senator Batters.
By the way, you know who's blocking people from living their lives right now? The government.
To speak to this Emergencies Act motion.
What
a sad day it is, honorable senators, that it has come to
It's infuriating. It's infuriating.
The government has invoked and employed the Emergencies Act on Canadian citizens before it could even be voted on in Parliament. Tear gas and batons and lines of police to shove back protesters chanting for freedom.
And singing the national anthem. And saying, we love you, as the cops detonate stun grenades.
And voluntarily. And even now, with the bridge blockades in Ottawa's protest cleared, the Prime Minister
nobody's got money. Who's got money to go make a run on the banks? They spent 2 years bankrupting
The incredible division among Canadians in this moment is largely
No, Winnie's back
Prime
here.
Minister
Winnie's back
Trudeau's
here.
own
Come on.
making. He and his government have divided Canadians among themselves, vaxxed and unvaxxed, and through his incendiary language, turned them on one another. Extremists, racists, and
Hold on.
misogynists. Prime Minister Trudeau preaches tolerance, but says those who chose not to be vaccinated against
One second.
COVID-19
Don't know what
took up
happened.
the room, and questions, quote, do we tolerate these people? And when these Canadians, in many cases Canadians who have lost much or have lost everything as a result of COVID-19 mandates, land on
Sorry about that.
doorstep to have their
Don't tell me to pick up the dog. I'm not moving. There's a loose plug somewhere in my beautiful studio. When I move, I'm not going to bang on the table.
Minority with unacceptable views. And so each side dug in, and we wound up with a 3-week
am I
protest in
biased?
front of
How
Parliament
is it that
and
I
unnecessary
don't like the
overreach of
Conservatives and I don't
Emergencies Act
trust
by this
them any
government?
more than I trust the Liberals?
Let us not forget
But they
that it was
seem
Prime
to
Minister
have their
Trudeau who
facts straight.
counseled
They
Indian
seem
Prime
to have their
Minister
understanding
Modi
of the
to
law
engage in
straight.
dialogue
How
when
is it?
50,000
How is
farmers
it
blockaded
possible?
the roads to New Delhi in 2020, a protest that went on for a year. Prime Minister Trudeau boasted, quote, Canada will always be there to defend the right of peaceful protest, quote.
He also said that
He
we're not a country that
refused
makes
from the get-go
vaccination
to engage
mandatory.
in dialogue with the
Those
blue-collar
people
working
are putting
who
us
were
all at
demonstrating
risk.
right here
Those
on
people,
Wellington Street.
they're
Honourable
putting their
Senators,
children at risk
throughout this
and they're putting
pandemic, we
our
have been
children at
fortunate
risk.
to still
And then
collect
this
our
Jack and he
paychecks,
comes out and talks
to
about
maintain
unity.
access to our
Too
health
late.
plans and other
Too
benefits,
late. You've done your
to be able
damage.
to work
You
remotely
gave me a
from the
black eye.
comfort
Don't
of-
tell me you
of our
didn't hit me.
homes when necessary.
Sorry, what did I just
Many
say?
of the people living in this public service city and downtown have also been fortunate. But there are other Canadians who have had a very different experience during this pandemic. Many have lost their jobs, their businesses, and their livelihoods.
Yes, I don't want to pick on Pat King. I know that he said things that are what are being taken to justify a lot of this nonsense. And there's an argument as to whether or not Pat King co-opted this convoy. And unfortunately, when you unify tens of thousands of people,
in Alberta,
there
where
will
many
be
of these
there
truckers
will be
came from,
those
people
types
were
of
already
incidents.
suffering economic
So,
devastation
yes,
prior to this pandemic because of
problem.
the
And
anti-energy
people were suggesting
policies
that,
of the Trudeau government.
You know,
The ever-ballooning
I don't get
carbon
into the
tax is
rumors.
a
Never
further
mind.
burden.
How can they just make stuff
Meanwhile,
up?
the oil and gas industry has been
who the hell's
vilified in
watching
this country.
this?
Only last week in BC, we
I
saw
don't want to make any
protesters violently
generalizations.
attack
I
the Coastal
guarantee you very
GasLink
few Liberal
pipeline
and
work camp with
NDP
axes and
supporters are
terrorize
watching
workers,
this.
and certainly with no discussion of invoking the Emergencies Act in response
Don't tell me
from
what
the
to do.
government. And while the
Okay, I'll
movement
try.
started from a place of resistance to vaccine mandates,
How many are we on
quickly
Rumble?
expanded to become about freedom more generally. And
Unbelievable.
the more the government and the
Rubbish.
Prime Minister in Ottawa spoke divisively against the protesters, demonizing them and refusing to
7,800
listen,
on Rumble.
the
Good.
wider and more expansive the
Yep.
movement became.
Not just a power grab.
Before
It's
I
a
go too much
perpetual
further,
power
let me be
grab
clear.
because it's
I
supposed to be
empathize with the
preventative now.
residents of
They want to
downtown
use the
Ottawa who
Emergencies
have been
Act
most
as a
acutely
preventative
affected by the
measure.
protest here.
It was supposed
They
to
have
be
had their
a
lives and
responsive
livelihoods
measure
disrupted.
to the utmost of
Understandably, they
national
wanted it to
emergencies
end.
when the
This
provinces
intrusion
lacked the
into their
resources
lives
to
came
do
at
it
the
on their
tail
own.
end of having
Not
suffered through this
preventative
pandemic,
for the
perhaps the
prospect of
most stressful,
potential future
traumatic 2
protests,
years of
which
many
may
of our
become
lives.
violent.
And then to have to deal with
it's
blaring
blasphemous.
horns
It's
all hours,
blasphemous
day
from
and
a
night,
legal and
the
constitutional
obstruction.
perspective.
Who among us wouldn't be saying enough is enough?
And they're lying to say it.
My office faces right onto Wellington Street,
Say
and
it.
I had a front row seat to this
What
convoy for
happened?
the past few weeks. And what I can tell you is that what I witnessed of protesters was peaceful, organized, and non-threatening.
By the way, you didn't need a front
I
row
do not
access. You
tolerate
didn't need a front
harassment,
window. You just
intimidation,
needed to
or
check into
destruction
my
ever.
stream,
But I
Zot,
can honestly say
Travel
that
Fund.
I
You just needed to
personally
watch
did not see
and
any
learn
of that behavior exhibited
and
by
live
the
it.
protesters. I have been here in Ottawa during all 3 weeks of the protest.
This
and
is
I
a
can
fair
say that
point.
in the
I can
last 2
understand
years,
it.
I never felt safer walking home from my office at night.
Yes, because that area was
Protesters I
never a
met
good
very
area.
much reminded me of the people I know in Saskatchewan, friendly, hardworking, patriotic Canadians. But I sensed in the discussions about the protesters in the media and among the privileged chattering
We'll get
classes
into
on
the
Parliament Hill,
Senate,
almost a fear
not
of these
composition, but
working class
history
people who
soon.
had invaded the city. Ottawa's mayor called them yahoos and idiots.
Happy Hanukkah.
Others online maligned them as Nazis and terrorists.
Dude, it's
Everyone had an
what
opinion
month is it?
about them.
It's February.
But certainly no one was talking with them.
Thank you.
It was widely reported that I posed in a photograph at the protest alongside my MP
We just saw that
colleagues from
up there.
Saskatchewan during the protest's first week. There were no protesters in the photo. There was an empty truck in the background with Saskatchewan's flags on it. Certainly nothing offensive. But in the Ottawa media, this was considered controversial.
Well, the
We went
FCK
to
Trudeau flags,
Saskatchewan
those are
protesters
offensive. Fine.
congregated on Kent Street.
So
From
be
towns
it.
like Stoughton,
Deal with it.
Southey, Caryville, Cardiff, and Birch Hills. These truckers are our constituents, and that is our job as parliamentarians to hear them out, to engage with those we represent, to listen to their concerns. They drove all the way to Ottawa from those Saskatchewan towns. Birch Hills is almost 3,000 kilometers or a 32-hour drive away.
That's exactly what domestic terrorists do. They drive 3,000 kilometers to park their car. That's the new definition of terrorism, people. Enjoy it from the Liberals.
Situation here in Canada's capital. Like so many other situations, what this Prime Minister sanctimoniously prescribes for others, he refuses to apply for himself. To be sure, the Emergencies Act is intense legislation for a government to invoke.
Listen,
should only be
she's got it
as a last resort.
Last resort.
When no other laws can deal with a national security threatening issue effectively.
And
I submit that this Ottawa convoy falls well short of that bar.
Not well short,
In the
not
past,
within
when
the
this act,
same
and more
ballpark.
accurately, its precursor, the War Measures Act, was invoked. It was in relation to World War I, World War
Yeah,
II,
the Senate is not
crisis,
elected. They're
which
appointed
involved
by
the
the
murder
Attorney
and
General or
kidnapping
the
of public
Governor
officials
General
and
at the
ongoing
request of the
terrorist
Prime
activities.
Minister. Not
These are the only
Trudeau
times
entirely,
similar
but
legislation was employed in the past. What is
Prime
the national
Ministers.
emergency this
They're not
time?
elected. They're
Dance parties
appointed.
and loud horns? Horns that, by the way, had long since stopped honking by
Which-
the time this act was invoked.
To the extent that
due
they're
to
not
a court
elected,
injunction
they're
that the
appointed by
truckers
previous Prime
complied with.
Ministers.
Honorable senators, just remember that when this government is long gone and another takes its place, of a stripe you may not agree with. The Trudeau government has now set this as
They
the
can't
precedent for
project,
invoking
they
the
cannot
Emergencies Act.
empathize.
Bouncy castles, loud horns, raucous partying, and illegal parking in a 4-block radius of downtown Ottawa.
Nailed
It's
it.
annoying, to be sure, but is this a national emergency?
No.
The federal government made no moves
I mean,
to
I'll let her
resolve the
talk.
Ottawa protest for 3 weeks, while the protesters were mere feet from the front door of West Block. If the situation were truly such a grave threat to national security that it rose to the level of employing the Emergencies Act, one would expect the federal government would have acted in some way, anyway, to resolve it, but they did not. Prime Minister Trudeau simply refuses to meet with protesters, then brought in the Emergencies Act as a first, not a last resort.
Yep.
When Deputy Prime Minister Freeland spoke on the issue,
Carl
she said
Dvorak
the
on
government
Rumble
used all the
says
tools it
truckers
had
across
prior to the
Canada should
implication
organize
of the
work
act.
slowdowns or
What tools?
boycotts of
Name
Ottawa or
calling?
provinces
The
which
Prime Minister
which
disappearing
persecuted
for
them.
days on end?
Avoid
More
occupation,
name
but
calling?
exercise
What
free will.
tools?
Fly the
The
flag
same tools they used
of
for the
labor
railway
rights.
blockades in
Thank you
2020
for,
that went
it's a
on for
$100
19
Rumble rant.
days,
Thank you.
and for which the government still never invoked the Emergencies Act?
Oka
When the
crisis,
Prime
they
Minister
didn't.
announced that he was engaging the Emergencies Act, he told Canadians it would be in a geographically targeted way,
Yeah.
applicable only to those within the zones specified. Yet we see in reality the federal government's massive overreach in the proclamation declaring a public order emergency, which states that the public order emergency will apply, quote, throughout Canada. Several of the premiers oppose the use of the Emergencies Act to deal with this situation, including Premier Scott Moe of my home province of Saskatchewan. Many legal experts agree
Saskatchewan.
this situation fails to meet the threshold for exercising the Emergencies
She's
Act.
logical and she's
Among them are
fact-based and she's
constitutional law
accurate.
Professor Dwight
And she
Newman
understands
and
the law.
ARL,
God
Advocates
forbid.
for the Rule of
All
Law,
good qualities.
Amnesty International, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, the BC Civil Liberties Association, and even Paul Champ, the lawyer for those who successfully sought the court injunction against the horn honking of the Ottawa protest. They all agree this situation didn't require the Emergencies Act.
By the way, the injunction
Last
that
week,
blocked the horn
Canadian Civil
honking,
Liberties Association
they asked for a
announced that it is
litany
taking the
of
government
injunction
Canada to
measures,
court
and they
over the
only got the
implication of this
horn
act.
honking. So
The CCLI's
that
executive
injunction was
director,
not a
Noah
victory
Mendes-Aviv,
for
called
the
the
city
use of
against the
Emergencies Act in this
convoy. It was
situation
actually kind of a
unprecedented
victory of the
and a
convoy.
serious infringement
They
of the
also
charter
probably
rights of
agreed to stop
Canadians.
honking anyhow.
She stated that by invoking the Emergencies Act, the government would be giving itself, quote, enormous powers to bypass the ordinary accountable democratic process, quote. Mendelsohn went on to call peaceful assembly, which by any measure this protest has been, quote, a critical democratic tool.
This is my tripod. So I have a little small tripod that I'm
BC
fidgeting
Civil
with.
Organization has further pointed out that the Emergencies Act should not be a stopgap measure to address the inaction of municipal police forces and provincial authorities. To be clear, they stated governments have ample legal authorities without using the Emergencies
They had
Act.
all the laws
Even
and
Paul
all the
Champ, who I
resources.
indicated was the Ottawa lawyer who went to court to put a halt to the incessant honking of horns by the truckers,
And they got it.
agrees that the use of the Emergencies Act in this situation was government overreach, quote. Although I am acutely aware of the trauma experienced by Ottawa residents, I fully agree that the Emergencies Act is a dangerous tool that was not required, quote. Many legal experts shared a concern that by invoking the Emergencies Act for the Ottawa protest, the Trudeau government is normalizing the extraordinary law's usage. The BCCLA warns that the invocation of the Act in this instance sets a dangerous precedent if our elected officials become comfortable with using excessive powers to target dissent in Canada. It becomes easier to use again.
I love her. Who is she?
Other movements such as Black Lives Matter or Indigenous land or water defenders. The advocates for the rule of law, or ARL, agree that this situation sets a dangerous precedent, quote, normalizing declaration of emergencies, especially before other less intrusive but still significant measures have been attempted, threatens to render hollow the rights and freedoms guaranteed to all Canadians. It risks a gradual erosion of Parliament's role in favor of executive power, and it amounts to a damning admission of a failure of state capacity, quote.
Yep.
But there is some evidence that normalizing emergencies may be the Trudeau government's intention. Deputy Prime Minister Freeland has recently spoken about making some tools in the Act permanent.
This is good.
We should all be worried about that, honourable senators. For all its raucousness and disruption of traffic in downtown Ottawa, can anyone seriously believe this protest was a threat to Canada's national security? Some will say it spawned blockades at the Ambassador Bridge, disrupting one of our main trade routes with the United States.
Resolved by court order.
And similarly, the one in Alberta were dispersed peacefully and non-violently, and most importantly, without recourse to the Emergencies Act.
No, with recourse to the courts.
Both houses of Parliament were able to meet for weeks, mere steps away from the protesters. Prime Minister Trudeau and his senior cabinet ministers attended several question periods and House of Commons sittings in the West Block in person. If there were a true public order emergency, surely none of that would have been allowed to have occurred. Honourable senators, consider all of the moments of crisis in Canada since 1988, and yet the Emergencies Act was not invoked for any of those occasions.
It's Lipsil, not chapstick. I can't use chapstick.
In which 25 Canadians were killed, not even during the October 2014 Parliament Hill shooting, and I remember that well because I was locked in a caucus room for 10 hours with my colleagues throughout. None of those situations required the use of the Emergencies Act. I fear that with this invocation, we are embarking on a slippery slope away from what Canada is famous for, its unwavering adherence to the principles of freedom and justice. These principles are why immigrants from around the world long to come to Canada. That is the reason so many of our ancestors came here, to escape tyranny. That is why my grandparents came to Canada from Ukraine 100 years ago. This country, this parliamentary system, this Westminster system, was founded out of the rejection of tyranny. The fathers of the Confederation feared not just the tyranny of the monarch, but the tyranny of the majority. And we in the Senate are a key part of that system, to stand up for the minority, to be their voice. It has not been lost on me, nor should it be on any of you, that this building, now the Senate of Canada building, where I deliver this speech today, is the very building where our Charter of Rights and Freedoms was negotiated. Think of that history, honourable senators, when you consider whether to allow this federal.
They're not thinking of anything. Anybody who disagrees with her is not thinking about anything.
That the Trudeau government's invocation of the Emergencies Act in this situation is considerable government overreach. And at this time, I am reminded.
She's being polite. Considerable.
Jr., quote, the best defense against usurpatory government is an assertive citizenry. Quote. We need to assert ourselves, honourable senators, and
this is being put in because the internet in Canada is being shut. Okay, not spreading rumors. Sorry, I don't know about that.
Emergencies Act motion. Thank you.
All right, and Patrick Irwin said, Viva, I could not think of anything super significant to say, but does this whole situation not feel like a bad Star Wars prequel plotline? Yes. I wish all Canadians are able to keep their freedom.
Thank you,
Please come live with us Americans if you lose your country.
I rise to speak in favor of the motion before us today.
I can't find your chat to bring it up, so.
It is my view that our country is dealing with a public order emergency that unfortunately requires the use of extraordinary and temporary measures.
This man's an idiot and a liar, period. Right now, let's hear what he has to say. I have an open mind.
Unprecedented
in our history.
The combination of border blockades, the illegal occupation of the city, let alone our capital, the harassment and threats of violence against residents and journalists, and the damage to businesses and our economic security, to say nothing of the explicit end goal of some of toppling our duly elected government, is not normal. Protests,
I'll tell you what's not normal, sir. Your understanding of fact and law. Who's this person? Peter Bohm, Senator, Independent.
In both world wars.
Independent, my butt.
1919. The On to Ottawa trek of 1935 and the subsequent Regina riot. Montreal even saw riots in 1885 over, you guessed it, vaccines, smallpox at the time. And of course, there was the October crisis of 1970 and Oka 20 years later.
Did you invoke the Emergencies Act during any of that?
Which have sometimes turned violent
Sometimes.
against pipelines and other projects. Some have been associated with major world events that Canada was hosting. I dealt with examples of this in my previous career, beginning with the Summit of the Americas in Quebec City in April 2001. Protest is a fundamental element of any functional democracy, Canada included. It is a right we all hold dear and one that must be protected. Here's the problem, though.
Yeah,
What happened in
but
Ottawa was no mere protest.
oh no, it's no mere
It was
protest.
an occupation.
It was an
And it
occupation.
certainly was not peaceful.
Oh, certainly was
I
not
realize
peaceful.
this is where
Liar.
opinion becomes sharply divided, but the absence of outright physical violence is not peace.
Oh my goodness.
Particularly over the weekend during law enforcement operations in downtown
Now
Ottawa,
it's violent
we
even if
heard
there's
and
no
read
outright
striking
violence.
terms including front line, occupied territory, gaining, and losing ground. This is usually reserved for dispatches from war zones. It's
This
not
is
how actions to
pathological,
disperse legitimate
disgusting.
peaceful protests are described.
It's violence in
This
the
leads me
absence
to
of
the
violence
predecessor
because of
the
words that are
Emergencies
used
Act, the
in war.
Measures Act used in October 1970.
I hope this guy
Then,
doesn't
as
play any
now,
video games.
Parliamentarians decried the perceived government overreach. This is much the same situation the current government faced in making what was no doubt. a
Yep,
very
no, that's
difficult
pretty much it.
decision.
Silence is violence.
However,
It's not what
the
you
major
said that was
difference today
violence.
is that unlike
It
in
was what you
1970,
didn't say.
the federal government does not have unlimited powers to restore order, and the Canadian military has not been deployed to city streets, something that shocked all
Yeah, no,
Canadians,
don't do. I
especially
understand.
residents of Quebec over 51 years ago. As we all
Can you
know,
believe they're
the
comparing
War
this to the
Measures Act
FLQ
was later
crisis,
repealed,
where people
and
were
in
kidnapped and
1988
murdered?
was replaced by the current Emergencies Act by
What's
the
this guy's name?
government of
Boner?
Ottawa
Boehner?
at the time.
Boer? Liar.
I wish to justify my support for this motion
Oh,
by
please go
addressing
ahead.
three areas.
We're
The
I'm
applicability
sorry.
of
I believe the
my
country
personal
might be done.
understanding of freedom and my views as an Ottawa resident.
Yeah.
First, I accept that the threshold for invocation of the Act has been met. If what we are dealing with is not a public order emergency, I do not know what it is.
How about a protest or a block party? How about kids playing on bouncy castles like the Ottawa Council was complaining
not only
about?
to our economy in pure numbers, but also to Canada's reputation.
This is
as a
fascist
safe,
manipulation.
engaged trading partner and investment destination. Jobs are at stake.
Jobs are at
Blockades
stake
in
from the
Windsor,
people who just
Ontario,
shut down
Coutts,
jobs for a
Alberta,
year and a
Emerson,
half.
Manitoba, and South
It
Surrey,
makes
BC
my
had in
stomach
common,
hurt.
on the surface, was an opposition to vaccine mandates, ostensibly for truckers, that very small percentage that believe vaccine mandates impinge on their freedom. The same goes for Ottawa. What the blockades and the occupation of Ottawa demonstrate is that the sentiments expressed suggest a national problem, not one confined to a specific region or city.
City.
The blockades and occupation of Ottawa, however, are not just about vaccine mandates, if that was ever really the point. Groups with deeper grievances, ranging from dissatisfaction with governments generally, particularly at the federal level, and unwillingness to accept the results of the last federal election.
Oh, there you go.
General frustration with how 2 years of pandemic and health control measures have impacted their lives, and quite frankly, a wish to raise a little hell. Mis and even disinformation, particularly on social media, has added fuel to the fire, and some of it has been spread by malign actors.
Please
This
go
is to
on.
say
Do
nothing
tell.
of crowdfunding, much of it foreign, a
This is
phenomenon we have not before seen in Canada.
psychological torture. This is intellectual
Some
torture.
protesters were prepared to engage in violence.
They were prepared
This
to
was
engage.
particularly clear in Coutts, where RCMP uncovered a disturbing plot to kill officers along with a cache of weapons.
Okay, first of all, it's a
As I have
cache
said,
if you want to actually
protest is
speak
normal
English.
in
But
this country,
let me just
as
see
is an
something here.
important
I'm going
part
to pull up
of
an
a
article
healthy
on the
democracy.
cache.
What is not
weapons.
normal is the blocking of critical infrastructure and holding a
Coutts.
city and its residents hostage for several weeks. Based on their analysis, the Ottawa Police Service and the Ontario Provincial Police concluded they could not bring the occupation to a safe and effective end with their own resources and under their municipal and provincial mandates. The immediate situation in Ottawa was largely resolved, according to our police forces, due to the invocation of the Act because it allows for greater police cooperation across the country without swearing in procedures and the time-consuming establishment of other protocols. For me, the sobering thought is that such blockades, occupations, and demonstrations could recur at any time.
Oh, there you go. Invoking the Emergencies Act to prevent future blockades.
Demonstrators and trucks does not mean the danger is over. The use of the Emergencies
It means
Act,
the
while
emergency
supported
is
in this
over.
instance,
That's what it
is a
means, not the
Band-Aid.
danger and what
It's
you
not a
think. It
cure.
means the
We must
emergency is
remember that,
over,
colleagues.
which makes your
This
entire
legislation
opinion
was
invalid.
designed with
Except
full
you're a
deference to the
senator and
Charter
I'm a
of Rights
dude
and
ranting at a
Freedoms
camera on
as a last
my
resort to
wall
deal
in
with
my
different
basement.
types of emergencies.
This is
I will not delve into the
nauseating.
detail that others have already
Yep.
offered,
It's
except to
it's
say that
painful.
there are serious checks and balances.
There are no
They are
serious
meant
checks
to
and
ensure
balances.
that the
This is
government
the
is held
same government that
accountable by
prorogued Parliament
and the
to
public
suspend
and cannot
the
maintain the declaration of
investigation
emergency
into the We
indefinitely,
Charity
nor
scandal.
for
There are
its
no
own
checks and
purposes.
balances. Otherwise, a
I would further
two-time
point out that it would
ethics-breaching
be
prime
quite
minister
challenging
would
for a
not
minority
still be in
government
power.
to veer into
Liars.
authoritarianism, despite what we have heard from so many critics.
There was no danger.
Colleagues, like all
I
of
had
you,
never
I
felt
heard and
safer
read what
walking in
demonstrators
downtown
in
Ottawa.
had to say.
And the homeless people,
They
by the
said
way,
they
had
wanted
never been
freedom,
better
or
fed
they wanted
because
it back, or
the
that they were
truckers
fighting for
did a
bodily
better job
autonomy.
caring for the homeless in
Their list
Ottawa
of
than the
complaints
Ottawa
was
government.
long,
You
and many of
damn
their
lying
slogans were
hypocrites.
American imports, for example.
I was there.
Don't tread on me.
I don't think this guy was.
Live free or die.
I didn't see this guy.
Others
14
would not
days,
exactly
13
fall
days I
under
spent docking. Never saw this guy.
parliamentary
I would have
language, we
remembered
know
his. By the way, he looks very
Even
tan.
some of the flags were imported from other places and other times.
Looks very tan,
It
like
is
he might have been in
upsetting to have to
Florida.
say that
Maybe someone wants to
Confederate
check
and
his
Nazi
vacation
flags have no
schedule.
place in Canada. In my view, neither do upside-down Canadian flags at our
Oh,
cenotaph, which is what I
upside
saw
down Canadian
out of
flags
my
is now
office window.
terrorism, people.
Demonstrators made their points. They complained very loudly and were heard. It was impossible not to hear them.
Oh,
These people,
it was
despite their
impossible not to
assertions
hear
that
them.
they unified
That
the
might be
country
the
as never
purpose of
before,
protest,
are not the
Mr.
majority
Senator.
they claim to be.
It was impossible to ignore
Over
them.
80% of Canadians
That's
have
kind of the purpose of
complied with
protest.
mandates,
Actually, that's
have
kind of the
been
purpose of your
vaccinated,
job,
have
is
learned
to
about
listen to them.
QR codes,
You-
knowing they were doing this for their
Bite my
health
lip, bite
and
my lip, and bite my
safety,
tongue.
and for the common good of all citizens. Surely, in this great country, we have learned throughout our history.
This country is
that our
not so
social
great thanks to what you're
contract
doing.
sometimes
This
must
country is
make
becoming very
sacrifices
not great,
to
specifically
safeguard
because
our
of you,
society
whatever your name
and
is.
protect each other.
They protect each
This
other.
is why we have laws and public health measures and why we pay taxes. The social contract we all sign on to. by
You
virtue
broke
of
that social
citizenship
contract,
and
sir.
residence in Canada is not rendered void because some people do not like it. That is also why we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, an important document that more Canadians should read.
Oh, I've read it. Have you read it? Ask him.
That it is
Someone in the
Charter
damn
by
crowd.
which we
Ask him
abide
what the
in
first
Canada, not the United States
provision says.
Constitution.
This is outrageous.
Colleagues, Canada has come through this latest pandemic with one of the highest vaccination rates in the world and one of the lowest COVID-related death rates. Why? Because Canadians and our
I don't know what that is.
federal
I don't think I
and
can lend that.
all
I'll
work
lend that.
together.
Share that.
Yes, there were some coordination issues, especially in the first dark days, but they were largely overcome. And those who did not and still do not wish to be vaccinated made their choice. In Canada, our mission since 1867 has been peace, order, and good government.
Yeah, well, you
For the
failed
most
at the
part,
last,
we have
you
fulfilled the
buffoon.
goals of that ongoing project. It is part of what Canada is known for in the international community. In my previous career, it was part of my job in the service of both conservative and liberal governments
Excuse me.
to promote and defend human rights and freedom in various
Excuse
parts
me.
of the world.
Seem
I
to
have
have,
many stories. I'll give you one.
in aggravation, blown
While a
fluid
junior
up through my
diplomat stationed
nostrils.
In Central America,
Jeez
I
Louise.
recall arriving late one evening at the airport in El Salvador.
Let's hear his
while
anecdote.
The country was engaged in civil war.
Oh, yeah.
I took a taxi down the deserted highway to the capital.
Fact
San
check this
Salvador,
story, people.
And was soon pulled over by a military platoon asking for my credentials.
Yep.
Surprise was expressed that I did not have a security detail. I'm Canadian after all. But then the commanding officer said that everyone
Whoa,
had
you're so
Canadians
funny.
because they stood
That's a
for freedom.
fantastic.
By the way, he told me, my sister lives in Toronto. I was warned to be careful because there were reports of a unit of the Farabundo Martí Nacional Liberation Front, FMLN in Spanish, a few kilometers up the road. Sure enough,
It's a good question.
members of the guerrilla group intercepted me and my now very nervous taxi driver sometime later. Credentials were again shown, this time to the self-described freedom fighters. I was asked to pose for a photo with the group, which the leader said he would send to his sister who was living in freedom in Vancouver. He then said we should be very careful because there was an army column nearby. The driver and I just looked at each other.
But you know the problem is, I don't believe a damn word this guy's saying. Based on his lies and misrepresentation of Ottawa, I don't believe his understanding of what happened to him 40 years ago. I don't believe this. Not
This
one
will
word.
continue despite the concerted efforts of many to besmirch, denigrate, fundraise, or even derive partisan political gain from the word freedom. Colleagues, I'm a resident of Ottawa, and for the past few weeks, I've walked to work every day.
Oh, did you get
It was
harassed?
the easiest way for me to get here.
Did you get
From my
harassed?
office in the Chambers building.
Did you get harassed?
From the moment I would open my front door at home to arriving at my office some 40 minutes later, I heard the truck horns.
Okay.
Usually in one continuous blast.
Okay.
I have walked past shuttered businesses, past the closed Rideau Centre, the 6th largest mall in Canada.
Was that because of the convoy or because of you?
Emanating from illegally parked idling trucks downtown.
Oh,
and in the
fumes.
parliamentary precinct.
Fumes from
I spoke with
illegally parked
protesters.
trucks is the
I
new
spoke with
threshold for the
people.
Emergencies Act. Enjoy
It
your
is
new
not the only
Canada.
example of this, but I personally saw from a distance
Yeah.
demonstrators carry out a racist and deeply offensive parody of an Indigenous ceremony.
That might have been
senators
Indigenous
have
people
received
carrying out a
countless
ceremony.
emails and phone
Big
calls
Bear
from
or
Canadians
Big Bull. I
and from some
interviewed them.
Americans
You,
too,
oh my
asking us
God.
to vote
Oh my
against
God.
this motion, and also asking us in many instances to bring down the government.
Can you imagine if this idiot
I have
actually
received many
thinks that a
communications
racist
as well from residents of
replication
this
of an
city
Indigenous
who are
ceremony
simply
was an
trying to
actual
live their
Indigenous
lives in
ceremony
peace.
like they did
They
in
were
Confederation
scared,
Park
and they
and I was
were,
there
and are
to
angry.
interview them?
I am too.
This
on my
guy,
own
this,
and on their
oh my
behalf.
God.
Residents
I'm
have
sorry,
been
I don't
harassed
like
for
using,
wearing
I
masks.
don't,
They have been subjected
I'm
to
not religious.
racist
I
and
apologize for
misogynistic
using
comments,
the Lord's
and
name
no
in vain. I
amount of,
apologize.
oh, but that's just a few bad apples makes this less unacceptable. Seniors and people with disabilities who rely on meal deliveries, such as Meals on
No
Wheels,
one.
have been impacted by
No, they
packed
haven't.
streets.
Lie.
People
And
have
that
worried
makes you
with
a
good
liar.
reason
This person
about
right here,
their
I don't know what his name
residences
is a
being
liar.
attacked. Public urination and defecation. Even on
Jesus,
the
it's
sacred
not like
ground of the
Ottawa
National
had a
Reservoir.
homeless problem before
A
this.
sense, again, with very good reason, that the rules did not apply.
Do you know
to
that?
the
Do you know that? First of all, they brought in
And
porta
worse,
potties, so this
they
guy's a
believed it as
flagrant
well.
liar. Did you know that
A
Ottawa
loss
has
of public
3
trust,
safe
no small
needle
matter in
centers?
municipal authorities, including the Ottawa
Did you know
Police
that
Service,
Ottawa had a
beleaguered
bit of
as
a
they
homeless
were.
problem before this, and they were
decrease
displaced
in
from the
mental and
Ottawa
physical
core
health
because of the
as a
convoy?
result of this occupation.
They brought in
A deep
porta
concern
potties.
of
And
the
these
impact
truckers,
of
by
all
the
of
way,
this on children.
they live in their
and
trucks
even
on
on
an
pets.
ordinary basis. They know how to pee in a bottle
All of
and
this
do
leads
the
me to
duty
have
where
great
they need
concern
to.
for members of our dedicated
This
Senate
guy's
staff,
a pathological
as other
liar.
senators
Period.
have mentioned,
End of it.
those in our offices and in the Senate administration.
But
who
by the
live
way, nonetheless,
downtown and in
he still
Senate
walked
town.
to work every
Check
day.
in with them,
Still walked
colleagues.
to work every
See
day,
if they're
40
okay.
minutes. It was so
Colleagues, no
dangerous in
matter
such a
how many
national
inquiries
emergency.
are
This
undertaken under
member
whatever
of
levels
parliament
of government,
walked without
this
security.
event has marked the
Nothing
lives
like
of
El
Ottawans
Salvador. This
forever.
guy walked to the
In
office
fact, it is
every
one that
day.
impacts all
Such a
Canadians,
national
even
emergency.
those who
These
live
people are an
nowhere near
absolute
here.
national
The
disgrace.
use of the Federal Emergencies Act and the long-term implications of doing so on our national psyche makes that clear. We know there are people across the country who see Ottawans as entitled and who did not want the convoy to leave the city. People who are happy to show their explicit support.
I know.
for the
I'm looking.
demonstrators and
I used to
their
wonder how people went
Maybe
along
we
with
need to
the, with
reflect on
and
comments
got away with
made
the
and
propaganda
actions
in
taken.
places like
It
USSR.
is not just
These
the
last few years
supporters
have
of
been
the
a sobering
demonstrations in
lesson.
Ottawa and the blockades across the country who need to reflect. Every single Canadian must. How we respond in this moment will have effects not just now, but into the future. This is not just a debate on the use of the Emergencies Act in this specific situation. It is a debate on what we want this great country of ours to stand for. Thank you.
Senator Lankin, there's 35 seconds left.
I don't know if you'll get a chance to answer this, but your role in the Summit of the Americas, as well as your knowledge of the G20 and G7 meetings, have been referenced as examples where we were able to coordinate police resources. How many months of planning went into that? How much time was there to actually deputize police?
Senator?
1 year.
Thank you. Resuming debate, Senator Pate.
Speaker, I also rise as someone who has the privilege and responsibility of living and working in the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. Colleagues, all indication is that the urgent situation of the past weeks could have been prevented. The occupation of the streets of Ottawa did not begin as an emergency. It became one because of inaction and intransigence by all levels of government and was shaped in particular by
It became an emergency.
racism, misogyny, and bias in state
Misogyny.
attitudes, including among law enforcement, as well as apparent feelings of overdue reckoning and unification of people who have long been left behind, many of whom have experienced victimization, criminalization, and institutionalization by those same state authorities. While many of us were stopped and questioned on the road, trucks were permitted to roll in and lay siege to the nation's capital. This even though public authorities had advanced intelligence of the involvement of violent extremists. It is clear white supremacist, populist, racist, xenophobic, discriminatory objectives filled the hearts and minds of key organizers and those who bankrolled and emboldened them to promote hatred.
I'm Jewish. I donated to the convoy. I interviewed a transgender individual. I interviewed multiple members of the gay community. I interviewed multiple indigenous members. I interviewed black people, Kuwaitis, Romanians,
I am
Russians.
beyond heartbroken.
Yeah, you feel
That
heartbroken.
communities and families are being pitted against each other.
Well, that's thanks
that
to you.
people I
man.
know and love are among those here
Oh my
across the
God,
country
this is.
and in other
Look,
nations
if you guys enjoy watching this, I'll continue raging. This
and
is
abandonment
absolutely
by health,
nauseating and
economic, social
vomit-inducing.
systems think they have found common cause.
Oh, yeah.
These emergency measures may end the blockades and occupations.
They're over the
but they will
blockades
not
and the
address
occupation. It's over.
disenfranchisement and divisions
over.
that these actions reinforced and exacerbated. If we actually hope to end and prevent such insurrection, we must crucially work to ensure that the most dispossessed and marginalized are no longer left behind.
So the Emergencies
We
Act
must
now is to
prioritize equality,
is for
dignity,
equality.
fairness, and justice for all. Years before Parliament Hill became my workplace, on the center block protest grounds and beyond, I organized and participated in countless demonstrations and protests aimed to disrupt and raise concerns about inequities and grievances from anti-poverty, anti-war, pro-choice, anti-racism, anti-violence against women, support for missing and murdered Indigenous women, anti-heterosexist, anti-fascist, anti-capitalist.
What the hell is she talking about?
Environmental,
Seriously, like, what is she talking
women's,
about?
Pro-choice.
Just throw words out there.
Pro-choice. Black Lives Matter.
I know it's verbal
the
diarrhea
list
is what
goes
you have
on.
right now. That's why like stuff is coming out. You don't even know what's coming out of
Purpose
it.
is to disrupt and get change. The purpose is to create action. Unlike this occupation, prior to the wielding
drew
of
the
the legal
distinction.
sledgehammer of the Emergencies Act, the full force of the law was often swiftly employed to subdue, suppress, and squash lawful and peaceful protest. It certainly was not the norm to have law enforcement and conservative interests joining, posing for group photos, or urging us on.
There you go. Take him down. Take him down. Arrest all of them. Freeze Poilievre's bank accounts. Let's see that happen.
Driving to my office on January 28th
You drove to your
and
office?
beyond, I was stopped, questioned, and urged not to proceed,
By whom?
only to then watch trucks being waved through as they drove.
Who is
onto
she stopped
Parliament
and
Hill.
questioned by? And urged
We
not
now
to.
know
She
that
was stopped by
Canada's
police.
Integrated Terrorist Assessment Center warned the federal government days before the siege that violent extremist groups were deeply involved and that the scale of the protests would be a quote, trigger point and opportunity for potential
Yep.
lone actor
So-
attackers to conduct
Never.
a terrorist attack.
One of your colleagues said
Why
that
did
never
authorities
happened.
Not take this threat seriously.
Never happened. So that makes you a
Homeless
liar.
people trying to survive in encampments, Indigenous people protecting their lands and waters, Black Lives Matter protesters, women, environmentalists, striking workers, and countless others have too often faced state use of force and even brutality and violence when exercising their rights.
Oh, so
to peaceful
all that she's
assembly.
angry about is that they
I
didn't
cannot
use the same
imagine
brutality on them.
Any of these groups being permitted by law enforcement to drive multiple vehicles, much
Well,
less
hey, man.
18-wheelers onto Parliament Hill.
Well, don't worry about that. It's never going to happen again. So
contrast,
you've
those
also
occupying
throttled
Ottawa were
Indigenous
granted
rights
incredible
protests.
leeway
Good for you.
to move
You
flammable
just sent your
liquids
people back
and
100
heavy
years
vehicles
by
through
this.
heavily
Because no one's ever
populated
going to be able to
areas
protest
and to
Indigenous rights
harass,
again.
bully, and threaten people, including frontline workers, health
There
and
will be no
retail
more
workers,
Indigenous
service
protests
providers,
thanks to what you're doing right
residents,
now.
and homeless folks.
Enjoy it.
Police claim that they have received few official complaints. This after advising Ottawa residents seeking assistance that they could not intervene, that people should shelter
Can you
at
hear me
home,
now?
remove their masks when challenged by occupiers, or consider temporarily leaving their homes in the downtown area. Counter-protesters who confronted
Can you
trucks
hear me now?
reported being
Gosh
approached by
darn it, I've been
police to
spewing
negotiate
gems
safe
for the last
passage
30
of
seconds.
the convoy, including being asked, if you
hold on,
don't
let me-
move, how does this end? All
get
of
to the
this
bottom.
reflects
Can you
the
hear me now?
racism, misogyny, and bias long identified in policing, corrections,
Fixed,
and the
yeah.
military.
This
and in some
woman
respects,
just
the
ended
government,
all Indigenous
whereby
protests.
some are
Good for you.
privileged with
Be
protection,
careful what you wish
and
for.
others are at best abandoned and
Oh,
at
she was
worst
saying that
allowed to be
if it had been an
brutalized.
Indigenous
In a
protest,
context
it
where
would have been
every
ended
state
with
authority is
violence.
being
So her
investigated
anger
for
is
failure
that
to address
this was
class,
allowed to
race,
continue. Well,
and gender bias,
be
the
careful what you
reluctance
wish
of
for, ma'am,
individuals
because
to
you've just
report such
ended
actions
Indigenous
is not
right to
only
protest. You know what the
understandable,
funny thing is?
but should be
When they protest
expected.
up my street, I didn't care.
Honorable
I
colleagues,
couldn't move
how
my car
comfortable
for
would you
1-2
be
days.
pushing authorities,
In
some
fact,
of whom you
I
are
moved
seen
it. No,
posing
I
for
don't know what happened.
selfies
Doesn't matter.
and
I
otherwise
couldn't move the car.
endorsing the individuals you fear?
I didn't care.
How do
When they
you know which
blockaded the
officers
CN
are the
rails,
ones
I was
who
like,
will
okay,
act
you get a court
professionally
order,
and
get a court
fairly
order, and
versus
enforce
those
it.
who may not?
The block.
The sense
You
that
just
police have
ended
stood
Indigenous
by,
rights
condoned,
to
or even
protest.
supported the
Good for
occupation
you.
is unfortunately
careful what you wish
reinforced
for.
by the presence of former police,
And
military,
then the lies.
and
I mean, there
national
were lies.
security
There were lies.
personnel
I
amongst
can't
the
even get back to the lies.
organizers, funders, and occupation participants. Meanwhile, people living on the streets, people living below the poverty
Have been
line,
never
women,
better
Indigenous
fed in
peoples,
Ottawa.
African Canadians, and other racialized people, those living with disabilities, and members of the 2S LGBTQ community have disproportionately borne the consequences of the occupation.
Lies,
while
lies, lies,
simultaneously
lies.
seeing
I was
that little
there.
has been
They were
done
well
to
fed.
arrest-
They were happy.
address
They
the
were
root
among the
issues of
crowd.
the
They were
inequalities
getting
they
warmth.
endure.
And they were, above all else,
At the same
they were
time,
getting
those
companionship
experiencing
because the
financial, social,
protesters
and
were
health
talking to them.
insecurity have also been
Oh my God, this is a
disproportionately
liar.
drawn
This is
into
an
the
absolute
anti-government
outrage.
protests.
I'm saying
Many
the word
joined
liar
the
too much.
occupation because of distrust of the government and concerns about vaccines or COVID health measure mandates.
The homeless in Ottawa
Decades of
have
evisceration
never
of
been
our
treated
healthcare
better than during this
systems
protest. They
meant
were
that
fed,
governments
they were
turned to
sheltered,
mandates
they were
to
actually
flattening the curve
interacted
of
with
demand
like
for urgent
humans.
healthcare.
And I'll tell you one
Small
thing,
government
just my own,
focus on
I'm
shrinking
ignoring
social,
it. I can't,
economic,
you know
and
what? Hold on
health
a second.
supports have resulted in
Oh, do you still
massive
hear her? I still
inequalities.
hear her.
Canadians below the poverty line are
I'll bring her back in.
twice
No,
as
I'm taking her
likely
back
as
out.
more well-off Canadians
No,
to
bring her
die
back
of
in.
this virus.
When I walked up the
Pandemic
streets, there was a
policies
homeless
left
person
the most marginalized
encamped on the
behind.
corner of the street.
The focus on
And
health mandates has
I was nervous that
overshadowed
there was someone in
the
a
collective
sleeping bag
dimensions of
that no one
health
had
and
looked at
reinforced
in a matter of time.
individualistic
And I went back
responsibility
during
for
the live
public
stream
health
to make sure no one
rather
was in
than
that sleeping bag
emphasizing
and
collective
unwell.
obligations and the importance of government
This
and
is
business
the most
ensuring
disgusting thing I've ever heard in my
safe
life.
living in
Because this is a
workplaces,
future of a
paid sick
country.
days,
They are
or
maligning
equitable
a people.
availability of health
To
supplies
destroy a
and
country,
emergency
and this woman,
supports.
she just thinks she's
Too
going to have a
many
good
in
front row
Canada
seat.
experience
She's going to be
economic
enjoying the state
deprivation,
like that guy in the
uncertain
Matrix.
if
She'll
they will
enjoy
have
her
the
last
means to
good
care
meal
for,
while everyone else
feed,
burns
and
because of
shelter
her filthy
themselves and their
lives.
families.
This is
Across
outrageous.
Canada, the number of visitors to one of every 4 food banks doubled last year during
You think the
COVID.
truckers
Current
came to
policies
steal from
leave
the
those
food
in the
banks?
most
And I
precarious
talked to people who
positions
said that those
to
tweets
fend
about
for
the food banks
themselves,
and the
which
truckers
is
stealing
contributing to
were
many being
lies.
drawn to populist messages.
I'll
These
let her
feelings
talk.
of deprivation and abandonment were further intensified by the government refusal to dialogue, much less acknowledge and attempt to understand the feelings and real concerns expressed by many ordinary people from across the country who are struggling to get by. The government knew that protesters were coming to Ottawa, yet no attempt was made to intercept or address the issues being raised. While we certainly saw instances of extremism, racism, anti-Semitism, and misogyny here on the Hill, we should be calling all who oppose vaccine should we really be calling all who oppose vaccine mandates racist and misogynist, instead of trying to meaningfully understand and address underlying fears, anxiety, and frustration?
You just did that.
CBC recently reported the story of a man from Saskatchewan, a farmer and father of 2, who took part in a blockade of his provincial legislature. A volunteer firefighter, his mental health suffered after being a first responder to the bus crash that claimed the lives of members of the Humboldt Broncos hockey team. When a workers' compensation board denied him income supports, he reported that he really quit trusting other people to make decisions on his behalf. During the pandemic, he opted not to vaccinate himself or his 2 children. He decided to join the protest looking for, quote, a sense of belonging.
She's so nervous
after
right now because
witnessing
she's
the hurt
spouting lies
experience
and she can't
by
even
his
read them straight.
12-year-old when their family was not allowed to go into ski chalet to eat
Okay, so what happened?
because they were unvaccinated.
So what happened?
The man said he felt like they had been treated as if they were dirty.
Yeah.
He acknowledged that some involved in the protests were extremists, but many were ordinary, hardworking people. He has heard reports of occupiers in Ottawa harassing a homeless shelter and displaying Confederate flags and swastikas,
Lie.
but
Lie.
doesn't trust the media and believes such stories are fabricated.
Yeah, they are, because you're
As
fabricating
highlighted
them.
by the work of the African Canadian Senators Group and the Parliamentary Black Caucus and our Indigenous colleagues, despite frequent references to truckers and vaccine mandates, the organizers of the occupation are not tied to the trucking industry. They are linked to organizations espousing extremism, anti-democratic values, violence, and white supremacy.
There's only one
They
person
hope
I
to
can think of
benefit
that
from
might
the
fit that bill.
attention, recruit others to their cause, and try to normalize hateful symbols and messages. The emergency measures we are debating will not end people's sense of disenfranchisement, distrust, and anger.
But I'll vote for them
Indeed, they
nonetheless.
run the risk of further eroding trust in government by stigmatizing and further isolating those on the
I'm
margins.
confused. Is she going to vote for this or
Responding
not?
meaningfully to this occupation means taking action against the hate speech that it has emboldened and which can prevent women, racialized people, and many others from exercising their rights and participating in their communities. In the short term, the government could, for instance, reintroduce legislation.
I don't
for
understand which
Parliament
way she's going. This is
reenact
diarrhea.
former Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act. This measure
It
would
makes no
allow
sense,
advocates to
Adria.
file complaints about
No
hate
sense.
propaganda targeting specific communities that is likely to do significant harm. Secondly, as human rights advocates like Munia Mazig remind us, quote, it is time to repeal current useless and unconstitutional so-called anti-terrorism laws and hold a public debate about the meaning of freedom.
Which way is
Instead
she
of laws
going?
that curtail our civil
This is-
liberties, we
this
should
is-
reflect on the importance of respecting our human rights to ensure both our safety and our security.
Which way is she going?
Finally, on an urgent basis,
Please
we
hurry
must
up and get
also
them
ensure
finally.
that social health and economic policies address the inequities that rig systems and abandon people in vital need of support.
Why is she wearing a
to
mask? I'm not trying to
situations
shame
of crisis
her.
and vulnerability.
Why is she wearing the mask for her
COVID-19
speech?
reminds us that none of us will be okay until all of us are okay.
Is it really? I needed
Safeguarding our health and
COVID-19 for
well-being
that?
in this pandemic and beyond is necessary a collective and inclusive, not an individual endeavor. We cannot hope to protect ourselves from the effects of COVID if those around us lack the financial means and supports to similarly ensure their safety and well-being. Likewise, we cannot hope to counter disenfranchisement and division without
Okay.
plans for income, health, and social equality
What
that
the
cease to leave people behind.
What is she
The
talking about?
processing man from Saskatchewan, despite his distrust of the media, shared his story with CBC, saying that, quote, he believes more
I'll
communication
say
and understanding are
dribbling.
needed, and he wants
This
us
is
all to
drivel.
be friends after this pandemic is said and done. This is a goal I believe most Canadians share. We absolutely need to come together to address inequality and work to build an inclusive
Some of your
future.
ears should be bleeding.
We need to build an inclusive Canada.
What is
Thank you,
what?
colleagues. Miigwech, merci.
What's your vote? What was your vote? For goodness sake, you're voting on the emergencies.
Senator Carter?
I'm gonna barf. I'm gonna barf in my mouth. Does anyone know which way
Thank
she
you, Your
voted?
Honor. I want to begin by thanking colleagues for their deep and thoughtful remarks in this debate,
lies.
even when we disagree.
Oh, yeah, okay, this guy. I
I'm
don't
going to
think
be speaking in support of the declaration, and I want to speak to three aspects of the issue. The first is personal, the second I would call decisional, and the third institutional.
the first is irrelevant.
The personal. In the fall of 1970, I was in my final year at business school in Saskatoon. On a Saturday evening,
Three
in late
B's to the
October,
dollar is what they called
I
it
attended a
then.
party at somebody's house. As I arrived at the party, there were a group of 6 or 8 young men, nearly all of them business school
Track this guy down.
classmates.
Track his history down. What did he
Engaged
do
in
at
a
that
heated
party? I'm
discussion
smelling a
with one other
Kavanaugh
person.
party here.
The business school group was supporting
Not
the
tracking down
imposition
like
of the
a
War
that way,
Measures
but
Act.
This is a
in
debate. No,
Quebec.
this is
The
a
need to get lawlessness under
diarrhea.
control,
I
and
need-
if
I
a
need
few
food, actually.
rights got trampled on the process, a small price to pay. The one other person was a law student. He patiently made his case to the effect that people were more than the sum of their economic parts, that they are sentient beings with rights and obligations that are the essence of who we are as
By the way,
humans.
sentient beings is a term that they
I stood
use
at the
for
edge of this
animals,
debate
not
and
for
listened.
humans, because no one
To
has
be
ever
honest, I
denied that
hadn't
humans
thought
were
much about
sentient
these
beings.
issues and
This
human
man
values.
is a
It
racist,
was for me a
discriminatory man
life-changing moment.
who actually has to qualify
That
humans as
eye-opening
being
discussion
sentient
was the
beings based
single
on their
most
race.
important
So,
influence
let's see
in
where he
my
goes.
decision
Let's
to
see where
go
he
to
goes.
law school and begin a career in law.
Okay.
Rights and laws and the rule of law have come to matter a lot.
Humans are sentient
In a
beings by
remarkable way,
definition.
that moment
Animals
and the
are
influence
not.
of that law student, Henry Kloppenberg, now a brilliant, principled, courageous, and somewhat eccentric Saskatoon lawyer, set me on a career path that brings me to this moment, and probably the most important decision today that I
No,
will make
and
in my
you made the
professional
wrong
life.
one, so may you live forever with this
That's what I
decision.
will call the decisional. I won't speak about Charter of Rights issues, but I would associate myself with the remarks of others, including Senator McFadden.
I won't
on
speak
this
about
point.
those pesky Charter
On
of
the
Rights issues.
decisional, I think it is important to remove from consideration in our discussion and decision the argument that if something had been done earlier and better, we wouldn't be in this fix.
Well, there's no H in better,
And
sir. Just
therefore,
throwing
we
that
are
out.
entitled to withhold
Better.
approbation
There's an H in
of the emergency
Whitmer.
declaration.
And what? And for
I
which
agree that
reason?
various actions by various actors could have been averted and moderated this crisis, but that is not the test today. It is, having gotten to where we are, is this declaration a reasonable course to be taken? Here's another way of looking at it.
I think it is.
Many have written
Apparently
that
my
wiser
microphone
decisions
is
taken in
muted.
1919 or 1935 or early in 1939 might have averted World War II. Well, tragically, they weren't. But can you imagine if we were exercising this emergency power in 1939, we would have said that because somebody else did a lousy job of averting war earlier.
Can you imagine this guy just invoked the Holocaust analogy
to ask the
to
question
justify invoking the Emergencies Act? He's saying if we don't do this, we might have a Holocaust. Understand what this guy just said right now.
In the case of those,
If we don't invoke the Emergencies Act, we might have a
some
Holocaust.
background on these questions, but to be better
And
informed,
by
I
the way,
retained a distinguished constitutional law expert, Professor Wayne McKay, to advise me. He's a professor emeritus at Schulich School of Law at Dalhousie in Halifax. In so doing, he identified 12 features of concern that take us into the realm of national emergency. Virtually every single one of them has been mentioned in the debate today.
Yeah, have they been met?
Nearly all of
Mentioned
these
and met are
related
two
to
very
unlawful
different things, you
conduct.
liar.
Some of this conduct could unquestionably have been addressed using existing powers, but much of it, particularly in Ottawa, could not have been achieved, certainly not without much more serious adverse consequences than actually occurred. And that's important. I want to focus primarily on the
If we
situation
don't know
in
how
the
long
nation's
this goes
capital,
on
I'm
for, or if
deeply
this goes on
troubled
for
by this.
hours,
We have
do we
seen
break out
protests
of
in
this,
Ottawa before.
talk about some
They have
subject
been for
matter,
me
and
a
then
sign
come
of
back
the
to this?
health
'Cause
of our
I'll puke in
democracy.
I'm gonna vomit in
We
my
have to
mouth.
get back
if I
to
listen
that
this
state as soon as we
forever.
possibly
Do
can.
we get onto some subject
And I'm
matter and then
fine
come
with
back
people
to
coming
this?
to Ottawa to protest in favor of courses of action that are unrealistic
How
or
do we do
legally
this with the chat?
impossible.
One,
Say the removal of
if
the
you
Prime
want us
Minister by the
to
Governor
talk about
General
other
and the
issues and then
Senate.
come back to this,
But I've
put in
never seen
one.
protests
If
of
you
the
want to
like that
listen
we've
to
seen
this
over the last
diarrhea
month, where
and with me ranting,
protesters
put in two.
transitioned their protests
And then we'll do it.
into an occupation
Go.
of the center of our nation's capital, and sought to
Stop
leverage
one,
this
continue
illegal
with the diarrhea
occupation
two.
to advance their various
Damn it, there's
grievances,
too many
but
ones.
also
Wait, stop
within
the
some
diarrhea.
corners
continue.
of that
Good.
protest, some dark corners, to actually leverage the removal of the government by other than
One is
legal and
removed as
constitutional
diarrhea
means.
from our faces.
And exactly
correct?
where was this illegal occupation occurring? Within meters
Okay.
of the beating heart of our national democracy,
Hold on.
and within
Hold on.
meters of the office of the Prime
Hold on.
Minister of our country.
Hold on.
Equally compelling for me
I
in this
don't want
argument
to
is what
Shut your faces. My stomach hurts. So I know now that nobody is hearing or seeing this. Do we listen to the debate, or do we at the very least address a couple of let's address a couple of issues, because we're not going to have a vote for a while. No, it's a nightmare that won't stop, and I don't think I can listen to it anymore. I'm open-minded. I've heard both sides now, because it's just regurgitating diarrhea. Hold on. How do we do a fresh restart? Then yeah. There's no point. I can't do. I won't say that. I won't say what I'm thinking right now. I'm going to take a deep breath. We might be doomed. And okay, let's just start with one rumor. My sweet Merciful, good God. Can we believe this? An hour and 23 minutes into this, we haven't gotten to the meaningful stuff. We've listened to verbal diarrhea coming. They're not elected. These people are career politicians, but they were appointed. And they were appointed by prime ministers. And this is the best and the brightest to represent 36 million people. Do not, without exception, without qualification, make recommendations for violence in the chat, please. If I see it, I don't block very much. I block that. Do we start with the defamation from W5 or do we start with let's start with rumors. Let's start with one rumor. Oh my God, I actually genuinely feel sick. Here's two rumors that we have to address. The first rumor is that YouTube channels who broadcast live streams from the Ottawa protests are being forced to shut down, make their videos private under penalty of whatever. So here's the first thing. I'm a vault, and I know stuff that I know that people cannot know that I know, and no one will ever know that I know the stuff that I know that they cannot know that I know. I will never divulge it. If someone says, I don't want you to divulge it, you will never even know that I have that knowledge. And I have it, and it burns a hole in my brain. There are rumors about people having to shut down or make private videos of YouTube live streams under penalty of whatever. To this, I can only say one thing. I have had all of my live streams, all of the live streams that were demonetized initially, remonetized by YouTube after manual review. So they were not all at one point demonetized that I had to request a manual review, but a lot of them were. And I would say a lot of them is in like 8 of 10, if not 9 of 10. If not all of them. I asked for manual review. They were all approved after manual review. The live streams, the unedited live streams. It might be because my channel has goodwill with YouTube. I've shown that I have quality content without breaking the rules, without spreading misinformation. So I might have more social credit on YouTube. I don't know that that's the case, but it's possible. All that I can say is that my live streams, all of them, have been manually that have been demonetized, have been manually approved after manual review. So when people are saying they're shutting down channels, I'm not skeptical. I'm just saying there might be facts that are unique to those situations that might explain that description of events. The dude, Mr. Sunshine, I don't know anything. I don't know. And so there might be unique facts to that. Zot is making videos private. I don't know. And it's his decision. There may be fear, irrational fear of rumors, or just, covering your butt. You got the views. And there's no point in having it up just in case. My philosophy, by the way, on this, deleting something if you did something wrong does nothing, because someone out there got the clip, and deleting it is not going to erase your mistake. It might actually just compound your guilt. Deleting something when you did nothing wrong deletes the evidence that you did nothing wrong. So I don't delete videos, even if I think it might be a problem, but it's never been a problem. I did not delete my Alex Jones deposition video. I left it. I appealed it. My appeal was rejected, but then YouTube had a second thought for whatever the reason. So deleting a video if you've done something wrong, by the time you have to delete it, that's not going to do anything. The damage is done. Deleting a video when you've done nothing wrong, you might actually be deleting exculpatory evidence. So that's my own personal opinion. # not legal advice. So people who might be deleting their things, fine. There's a big caveat to this. I made one video private. It's subject to a copyright dispute and another issue, and that's why it's private. And I'll make it public one way or the other after the copyright dispute is resolved. But other than that, no flag, no nothing. It was actually monetized. It was just, there's a copyright dispute, and I want to resolve a legal question, among other issues. So people saying I've been pressured to remove a video, unless you know the details, and I don't, I make no comment. All that I'm saying is that my videos, all of the streams were initially demonetized. And on my way home from Ottawa, I would pull over at the exact same parking spot every day. I'd go down O'Connor, I would turn left on whatever street that was, pull into a parking lot, request manual review, and usually by the time I got home, the video was approved for monetization. So I'm not worried that the government is saying, take down your videos or we're going to sanction you, because YouTube has already confirmed to me by virtue of my requesting manual review, and they're confirming it on manual review, that I'm good. If the government wants to say, we want your video off despite that, for whatever the reason, do it, and we'll have a political Streisand effect. So rumors aside, Zot made 10, I don't care. Zot made whether or not it's true, he might have done it out of fear. He might have done it out of precaution, and good for him. It's not my decision. Private is not deleted. Private is still there just in case you need the evidence, but I think it does nothing. So do not buy into the rumors. I know that they're out there. Forget the fear, forget the rumors, forget the hyperbole. That's my expression. That's my expression. That's my experience. I'm not worried about it. I have no doubt that the government of Canada would like to pull the live streams down because they don't promote the narrative that they would like to be promoted. But if they do that, they then have to pull down CBC, Global News, CTV live streams as well. You could go for the accredited news sources versus not accredited. That might have relevance in terms of access to locations, facilities, events. That, as far as I appreciate it, does not have relevance on YouTube, especially since I'm not accredited, but all of my live streams have been remonetized after manual review on YouTube. So if the government has an issue, they'll take it up with YouTube. But if YouTube makes me take down a video that they have confirmed is okay, we'll have an issue. I might have an issue with YouTube. YouTube might have a recourse against the government, but whatever. So that's one rumor. Don't believe it. Just be skeptical and be wary. The second, more talky. How do I bring up the volume? I muted it because it was making my stomach hurt. I'll bring it back up in a sec. The second rumor is that people's bank accounts have been frozen by virtue of having donated. Now, you know what? Hold on. So they're still debating. Paula Simmons, Senator, Independent. Do we want to hear this? In the chat, people, do we want to go back and have our ears poisoned with diarrhea? 1 for yes, 2 for no. 1, I want diarrhea in my ears. 2, I would like my ears to remain diarrhea free. Let's see. 1 or 2. 1, yes, diarrhea. 2, no diarrhea. It is too close to call. Thus 4. We'll give her 30 seconds and the benefit of the doubt. Hold on.
Police had exhausted all options and needed emergency federal assistance to, quote, mitigate risks of potential conflict.
30 seconds, uninterrupted.
And those risks were real enough.
We're done.
We're done. Found 3 trailers filled with weapons.
We're done. We're done.
Handguns,
Ma'am,
a
you've
machete,
abused of your goodwill with
13
me. You are done. I will go back to the stream. I will take you out of the stream. You have violated. You had 30 seconds. You done. Okay. Second rumor is that people are having their bank accounts frozen solely, and this is the exquisitely important caveat, solely by having donated to the convoy. Just wow. I mean, can you believe it? We gave her 30 seconds. She didn't even need 2. About donations rumor. So here we go. I'm gonna pull up not the verbal diarrhea that gives us I just pulled that out. So hold on a second. Share screen, Chrome tab. I know I pulled it up here. It was the politician. Here we go. Okay. So this is the only let me just see. I can't see myself in this anymore. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Here we go. So Brienne is a single mom. So now I'm going to go back. This is from a conservative MP. And by the way, I want everyone to appreciate this. I don't trust conservative MPs any more than I trust liberal MPs. I might have my differing preconceived notions about whatever foibles they might have as conservative versus liberal. I do not believe a conservative just because he's a conservative. And it's not a question of I want to believe. I want to know. I don't want to believe. I want to know. So unless you're going to provide the evidence, you might actually be better off not speaking as opposed to saying, okay, here we go. Brienne is a single mom from Chilliwack. It's a very sad sob story, and it got me when I started reading it. Working a minimum wage job. She gave $50 to the convoy when it was 100% legal. I'm going to get to this point in a second. She hasn't participated in any other way. That's a factual dispute or factual claim that only 2 people know about, maybe 3. This guy tweeting, her who participated, or the government. Her bank account has now been frozen. This is who Justin Trudeau is actually targeting with his emergency orders. This is where it gets interesting. This is Mark Stroh. Hold on, let me just husband, father, Chilliwack, born and raised, member of Parliament, Chilliwack, and he's conservative. I don't see it here, but first of all, that's a good action banner. If you want a banner, that's a good banner. Here he says, thank you for those who have read this and offered to help someone you've never met. Shame on those who have read it and attacked someone you've never met. Shame is not the best argument, liberal or conservative. I will keep working with Brienne to resolve this matter with her bank and will provide updates as more available. This is where I get a little skeptical. I don't care that he's conservative. Tell me what I want to hear. I need him to tell me what I need to know, which is the truth. To those of you, especially the media, demanding more details on Brienne, having seen what has been said about her online today and what has been done to other convoy donors in the last weeks, I am not going to help you dox her. First of all, if she's on the list, she's already doxed. I know who she is, and I won't say, good, fine. And so here's my issue. Let me just bring that out. Let me bring that out. And let me bring, someone's texting me. Someone says we're overdue for a dinner. Now is not the best time. Mike, I will see you in a bit, but hold on. So I may like that guy. I may want that to be true. Here's my issue. I do trust the aggregate knowledge of the internet for good or for bad. And there were people responding to that tweet saying, we've got the list of doxed donors. Nobody by that name out of Chilliwack made that donation. In fact, nobody by that name out of Chilliwack made any donation. In fact, nobody out of Chilliwack apparently made a donation, but I don't want to oversell it. Hold on. Someone just said I'm being obtuse. Let me just pull it up so I can show you that I can take an insult. Fine. But your name is actually Spambot. So now I might be thinking he's lying. I don't care if he's lying. He might be mistaken. This is the problem. He might be mistaken. So this is the deal. I don't care if it's a conservative. Tell me what I want to hear. I need evidence and I need to understand that what they're saying is true. They can be the CBC and they could be telling the truth, even though I think they're liars. And they could be conservatives, even though I think they're liars. Tell me what I want to hear, even though it might not be true. You provide the evidence for that claim, or it doesn't exist. And now this is what I understand, because Chrystia Freeland may be a number of things. She might be the granddaughter of a Nazi sympathizer. She might be the granddaughter of a Nazi supporter. She might be a lot of things. She might be a member of the WEF, which she is. When she says we've frozen 206 bank accounts and they consist of organizers of the protest and those who parked their vehicles on Wellington, I think that's absurd, obscene, over the top, egregious, unconstitutional, un-Canadian, and offensive. I believe all of that. But I might still say, okay, fine. I will believe your statement nonetheless. So when this guy, I forget his name now and I can't see it, says, I've seen this woman. She says I had no other involvement. If she so much as parked her car on Wellington at any point in 3 weeks, not that it justifies it, but it explains it. And so if this guy's saying, I'm not giving you other information, I don't want the internet doing their due diligence, although the internet did their due diligence, I'm suspicious, I'm skeptical, and I'm not sure I will treat it with the requisite degree of skepticism that I believe it deserves. She's still talking. I can't believe it. Are we sharing the screen? Hold on. So we are. I shall remove you, ma'am. You had your chance and you blew it. So it's not that I don't believe the story. I believe that there might be details that this individual either is not aware of or might be disregarding, because if she so much as drove down, if she so much as had her vehicle driven by someone else be there on Wellington, that might explain it, albeit wrongly, but that might explain it. From what I understand, and I've been looking, I have not seen any shred of evidence that anyone's bank account was frozen solely by virtue of them having donated to the convoy. Now, some of you out there are saying, Viva, you're biased, you donated, and you're worried. First of all, I donated. I made it public before the dox. I'm not worried about being doxed. I ran for office. Anybody knows everything they want to know about me, and it's out there in the public. I can't be doxed because I'm already public. But I just want to make sure things are correct and accurate. So I donated. I actually made it quite clear before the docs, because when they shut down the GoFundMe, I was like, you guys are not going to tell me who I can and cannot support. It's a registered not-for-profit, a federally incorporated not-for-profit. You're not going to tell me who I can donate to because of your lies. And that pissed me off. And I said, and I was public, I don't care. So there's no self-preservation in this observation. I have just not seen anyone who donated have their bank account frozen. Globe and Mail ran an article saying nobody who donated is having their account frozen by virtue of having donated, solely by virtue of having donated. And it's not to say that I think they should ever have their accounts frozen, period. They shouldn't. It's an outrage. It's egregious. It's offensive. It's unconstitutional. It violates fundamental rights and freedoms, such as due process, peaceful enjoyment of property, freedom of association, freedom of thought, freedom of conscience. It violates all of that. I just want to know one material fact. To that individual with the tweet, you might be wrong. And if you don't provide the concrete evidence that she had her bank account frozen solely by virtue of her donation, it has to be treated with the requisite skepticism, even in as much as I want to believe it. So I've not seen one concrete proven case of someone who had their bank account frozen solely by virtue of a donation to the convoy, because I think it's fundamentally unconstitutional. And here's why. Damn it. I got there too quickly. I just took the person out. I'm going to bring her back in a bit. Here's why. Let me just get here we go. This is why, people. And this is also not cover my ass, although this might be cover my ass, because protecting the law is necessarily covering your ass. The Freedom 2022 Human Rights, the Freedom, damn it, did I make a typo? The Freedom 2022 Human Rights and Freedoms, i.e. the Freedom Convoy, Truckers Convoy, is a federally incorporated not-for-profit, meaning the federal government, approved its status to then go after donors is nothing shy of the most insidious entrapment conceivable. I want everyone to appreciate that. I got into a debate, and this is why Twitter is not a good place for debate. There are differences between not-for-profits and recognized charities. It's arguably, but probably not arguably, more stringent to get approved as a charity because you have to get CRA approval so you can issue tax receipts. That is Canada Revenue Agency approval so you can issue tax receipts. That being said, when the government recognizes a not-for-profit as a not-for-profit, it's because they've filed the required forms, they've satisfied the required federal requirements for the federal government to recognize them as a not-for-profit. For the federal government then to say anyone who donated to a registered, federally incorporated not-for-profit before any Emergencies Act could be criminalized, that is a violation of Section 11G of the Charter, which is holding someone criminally liable for something which was not a crime at the time they did it, an act or omission that was not a crime at the time they did it. I'm going to have to check that out in a second. So this is not a cover my ass. This is a cover your ass. I want people to understand this. If the government does decide to do this, if they do decide to engage in what I think would be the most egregious, offensive, unconstitutional overreach ever, to retroactively criminalize conduct which was not criminal at the time, everyone should know this argument, which is why I'm very skeptical of the claims. And if someone's going to make the claim, you'd better have damn good evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And to simply say, I'm not giving you the information because I've seen the way people have been treated by the media. First of all, she's doxxed already, so that's a bad argument. So that's all let's say. This argument, by the way, take it, run with it, understand it. If the government ever wants to say, you donated to what we recognized and approved as a not-for-profit, and now we're going to criminalize you, it's not that I don't think the government is criminal, because I do think they are. But there's levels to criminality. So with that said, stop screen. Is that what does it? Oh, so I've been clicking the wrong button. Now let me go share and just see where we are. So I hope everyone appreciates that. I haven't brought up a lot of chats. I missed one here. Peter Sintik says elements of a contract: 1, mutual agreement; 2, consideration; 3, competency; 4, lawful object. I was not competent when Canadian citizenship was imposed on me. Can my Canadian citizenship be annulled? No. I would very much like to stop swiping myself out of my own live stream. Damn it. And there's big chats that I can now no longer bring up, which I'm going to bring up. I'm going to read them. I can't bring them up. Brit Cormier, $200 super chat. Thank you. This marks the end of meaningful democracy in your country. Issue is the people voting yay did not arrive at their position via logic and reasons. Therefore, they cannot be swayed by logic and reason. I agree. This is what separates LawTube and many of its fans from the people in our governments. Brit Cormier, thank you very much. It's a $200 super chat, and I thank you for that. And then we've got Fishnet Costa Rica. I cannot bring it up because I brought myself out of my own live stream. Maybe I can. Oh, wait a minute, I can. Booyah. Fishnet Costa Rica. What is that? Hold on, guys. I gotta pull an oldie here. Oh my God, that's a sailfish. I could not appreciate what I was seeing. That's either a blue marlin or a sailfish. No, that's a sailfish. I believe they're the fastest fish in the sea. Maybe tied with tuna. Thank you. And thank you. If you meant to put a comment in there, don't put another super chat for the comment. Thank you. If there were to be any type of strike, could the PM use emergency act? Yes. Yes. He could use the emergency act to seize their assets, to freeze their bank accounts. I hope everyone understands this. The second the government deems your protest to be too disruptive, they'll declare a national emergency. They will declare an emergency to invoke the emergency. Oh, what's that? You blocked the bridge for an afternoon? You just interrupted travel. Emergencies Act, freeze your bank accounts, seize your cars, sell them to compensate for the damages. You have no idea the beast that you've unleashed, people who support this crap. You have no idea. In 2015, HuffPost ran an article by Dan Dickens. It's making the rounds now, predicting that Canada would become a dictatorship under Trudeau. The boy king worshipped Castro and fawns over China. Abre los ojos. I don't know what that means. That means cover your ass. I'm going to say that means cover your ass. That has to be cover your ass, right? Abre being, thank you. Okay, so that's where we're at with the rumors about freezing of bank accounts. I think it's rumors. Yeah, no, I keep swiping myself out of the stream. It's quite stupid of me. I want everyone to appreciate that. I would love concrete evidence that the government has seized an account solely by virtue of having donated to the convoy. I haven't seen it. And as I wrote to the CBC, come and ask me questions. I donated $1,000 to the convoy before the emergency order was declared, because even though I think it's wrong, I would not have donated afterwards. I would not have donated, and I would not have recommended anybody donate afterwards, because that would incur liability, wrongfully so, but predictably so. Beforehand, the government incorporates this not-for-profit. It's registered. So when I go to see, do I want to donate this? Are they a legitimate not-for-profit? And they come up on the Canada Business, whatever the website. When they come up as an actual incorporated not-for-profit with a Canada Business incorporation number, and I say, okay, they're legit, I donate. You want to try to criminalize that? Go ahead and see what happens when you do that. They're not that stupid. Anyone donating after the emergencies declaration or the emergencies invocation, you're I still think you're right, but you're asking for trouble. If you're Canadian, if you're American, good luck. Good luck with your jurisdiction arguments. Just so you know, St. Patrick's Day falls in the 30 of the Emergencies Act. So that's it. Haven't seen any confirmation about that, and I think I don't think it's true. And I'm skeptical, and I do not think that conservative tweeter knows all the facts, or if he does, it might be why he's not disclosing all the facts. And it's not because I don't want it to be true. Just to show you my level of objectivity. It's not because it's a conservative telling me what I want to hear that I'm going to believe it. Show me the proof, or take your tweet and keep it to yourself. Get it through your thick hair, Viva. The charter is toilet paper, Mike Pierce. How long before the name changed to People's Republic of Canada? Dude, your beard and your avatar are scaring me, but I love it because I've known you and you've been around for a long time. Thank you. Now there was one. There we go. 69.99. We need a war room pandemic up here in Canada. Would you be willing to host one, or would you know who could? Canadians need this show. Dude, this is a war room right now. It just happens to be, you might have just heard my hot water tank go on in my basement. I'll talk to Steve. I think I've been on Steve's show enough to think that this might be a reasonable possibility. It's all a question of discussion and agreement. All right, Vicky Dreams, how you doing? I remember your avatar as well. Thank you. Okay, now the other third thing. Hold on. Let me bring. I'll leave the avatar. I'll leave this up for a second. Share. Let's see what's going on with the Verbal Diarrhea Festival. The Festival of Diarrhea. Here's a guy via Zoom. What do we say?
To work on Parliament Hill.
We're going to give him 30
because I was
seconds.
in awe of the structure and what went on within those walls. It was also the summer of 1990 where we witnessed another crisis, the Oka crisis.
Yeah. Did you call the
Where we
emergency?
had non-Indigenous men, investors, wanting to build a golf course on a traditional Mohawk burial site. This crisis of 1990 forced the Conservative government of the day to send in the military after a request from the provincial Quebec government. I have seen and participated in many peaceful protests and have witnessed many different protests in front of Parliament Hill.
If he says
over
but,
the
I'm
years
done.
From people across the political spectrum.
If he says but, we're done.
But what we
Yeah,
have
we're done.
witnessed in
We're
the
done.
past weeks
We're done.
is anything but a protest.
Liar.
What seemed like a protest quickly became an occupation, which
I'm
quickly
going
became
to address
an
this in a
illegal
second.
occupation. Paralyzing the city of Ottawa and its
Paralyzing.
residents is something we have not seen before,
Lie.
not in Canada.
Oh, you saw it now, by the way,
We
because
saw
the government just
individuals
did it.
posing as Indigenous peoples, including several organizers. Now, I do not know for a fact if these people are Indigenous or not, but what I do know is that many Indigenous peoples across the country and organizations have denounced the cultural appropriation being exercised by some of these individuals.
Sir, Big Bull was Indigenous. Big Bear was Indigenous.
We saw how
Tamara
reporters were
Licks
harassed,
is Indigenous.
and in some
So this
cases
guy
not
just
able
this
to
guy
do
just
their
called into
jobs,
question, but then said, "I don't
chanting
want to."
fake news towards reporters who are part and parcel of our democracy.
No, they're not.
Reporters being spat on.
They were not. Lie.
We have
Lie.
witnessed more interest in U.S. media making absolute false statements about what is really happening in Canada.
He's trying to get on Fox.
The amount
Fox
of
News this case.
misinformation is pervasive because it affects us all.
Well, it's not pervasive because it affects
Other
you all. It's
high-profile
pervasive
individuals
and
throughout
then
the
might
world have
affect you all. but-
associated Canada's prime minister to Hitler. How infantile can grown man be?
Why don't you just respond to the substance
is
of
where
that
we are,
accusation?
and it's
Hitler,
very
by the
scary.
way, we're taking this guy out. I'm
Are we
sorry.
moving forward or taking a few
Let
steps
me
back?
just put him on mute so that
Well,
I don't
time
have
will
to
tell.
hear him on my end because I still hear him. It's burning my ear brains. By the way, comparing him to Hitler is juvenile. It doesn't even merit a response. Hitler in 1933 invoked the Reichstag fire, which was arguably, but not arguably, set up by Hitler so that he could go after and persecute his political adversaries. He then used the emergency declaration after the Reichstag fire to suspend Parliament for the further purposes of persecuting ad infinitum his political adversaries. What do you think Trudeau just did with this? Because we didn't have a Reichstag fire. We didn't need to have one because the media that this individual was just touting as trustworthy and laudable just said we had one. They just said this whole thing was violent. This guy here just said that the Indigenous people protesting, he doesn't know if they were Indigenous, but they don't represent. I'm sorry, sir. Go. Justin Trudeau is doing exactly what was done in 1933 Germany. He's not doing what was done in 1939 Germany, but he's doing exactly what was done in 1933 Germany, except Trudeau didn't even have to set up his own false flag of a Reichstag fire. He just had to lie about the most peaceful protest that lasted 3 weeks without incident until he showed up with his cops. Just had to lie about it, and his media did all the hard work for him. What was it? What did I say we were going to talk about next? Pat King. Let's go to the bail. Let's go to the bail hearing. Share. My God, it's repulsive and not. They're not paid actors. They're not actors. They're just useful individuals. Oh, I can't share more than one screen at a time. That's why. So I have to stop the screen. We'll come back. Anybody in the chat who sees the vote going on, let me know. I cannot listen to this anymore. I can't listen to it anymore. So no, that's absolutely not what I'm trying to bring up. Share screen. And we'll get to the bail hearing tonight. And then we'll get to the defamation. During the elections, Justin Trudeau. No, forget it. Right now, we're going to deal with Rebel News and the fact that Alexa Lavoie was shot in the leg point blank by Justin Trudeau's RCMP that he called in to deal with this protest, Alexa Lavoie from Rebel News. And if there's ever been any doubt, Rebel News might get things wrong from time to time. I don't think they've ever gotten something so materially wrong that they deserve to be discredited, period. Alexa Lavoie has cojones that you cannot possibly imagine on any human being. And during the elections, she went and asked Justin Trudeau a question about whether or not Canada is going to make 2 booster shots mandatory like they've done in Israel. That was shortly after Justin Trudeau had spent his time demonizing Rebel media. She was shot in the leg point blank by the RCMP officer despite having her Rebel media credentials and a microphone in her hand. And I want everyone to watch
Bonjour,
this.
M. Trudeau, Alexandre pour Rebel News. Donc, M. Trudeau, je vais revenir rapidement sur ce qui s'est passé hier. Vous avez diabolisé l'un des rares médias qui ne reçoit pas d'argent du gouvernement. Vous avez exprimé votre opinion en disant que nous propageons la désinformation. Si c'était vrai et si c'était le cas, la Cour fédérale ne nous aurait pas permis d'être ici. Aurez-vous l'obligeance de répondre à ma question en tant que Premier ministre ou allez-vous encore diaboliser mon média?
Will you answer my question, which was about the vaccines?
J'ai partagé ma perspective sur ton organisation hier soir. J'ai plus rien à dire.
I have nothing more to say. Look at that pompous prick to look away from her. And this is the day before yesterday. They shot her in the leg with a tear gun canister.
Bring her out. Come on. It's sulfur. You gotta take that shit off.
And I don't want anybody laughing at a woman crying, period. I don't want anyone making jokes about her mascara running because she was sobbing because she'd been shot point blank in the leg by a tear gun canister. I don't want any stupid jokes. I don't want anyone making jokes about a screaming woman, period. I believe they're going to be suing. If I know anything about Rebel News, they're going to... Am I muted? Please tell me if I'm muted. Can you hear me, people? This makes me vomit. Can you hear me say that? Mic check 1, 2. I don't want anyone making jokes. No, but people would laugh. People are going to say, "Oh, you got what you deserved. Oh, you're acting. Because we didn't see the moment that she was shot in the leg, but I saw the aftermath." Am I muted? I'm not muted. Okay, thank you. This is a government. Justin Trudeau in September. J'ai dit tout ce que j'avais à dire. J'ai plus rien à dire. I've said everything I have to say to you. I've got nothing more to say. And he turns away. And then by accident, the RCMP that he calls in, the RCMP is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They respond to the federal. They are federal. They're federally mandated. They just happen to shoot her in the leg with a tear gun canister. Now, anybody who's been shot by a paintball, it hurts, but not enough to cry, maybe enough to make you laugh unless you get it in the wrong part of your body. I want everyone to understand what just happened there. That is Justin Trudeau's police at his request, at his behest, at his demand. They were called in by him, for him, shooting a journalist in the leg, not with a gun, not with a bullet, with a tear gun canister. Those things weigh, 6 ounces. They weigh enough that they need to be able to be fired a distance away to disperse a crowd. And from what I understand, maybe the individual pulled the trigger by accident, but why would I presume these weapons have safeties nonetheless. I believe that it was not an accident. That's my belief. But setting my belief aside, it happened. And don't anyone say, I didn't see when it happened. She's a faker. She's Rebel News fake. Keep that. You could think those. You don't say it, and you'll get laughed out of the room. So that's what happened to her. They might be she went to the hospital. It was a contusion is different than a bruise in terms of seriousness. This is the only joke I'll bring up because funny. I say funny is funny and dark humor can still be funny. This is just, and by the way, these are the same. This is what the buffoons in the Senate right now are voting on. Yeah. You want to talk about what the Emergencies Act is for? Maybe you should invoke the Emergencies Act to strip Justin Trudeau of any power whatsoever. And that's it. That's all I have to say about that. Shocking and offensive. Clip that, share this, let the world know. What else was I going to? I had to share the screen on something else because it had to do with yeah, it had to do with the detainment during the no, so I brought that up. Okay, yeah, I should have been closing the window so that I don't have to go through my notes. My Twitter feed has turned into my notes for discourse. Let's go to so what's going on with Tara Litch and Pat King. Pat King, by the way, I'm not going to say bad things about Pat King for the sake of it, and I'm not going to say bad things about Pat King, period, because I don't know enough about Pat King to say bad things about him. My introduction to Pat King came this summer when I was in New Brunswick on the road trip, and there was that viral video. People were freaking emailing me left, right, and center, messaging me, texting me, DMing me. Pat King, this guy from Alberta, Pat King, Red Deer, Alberta, ended COVID. He ended COVID. They're pulling back the measures. He solved the COVID riddle. He won his case. He subpoenaed the Crown. They declined the subpoena, and it's over. COVID's over. And I'm not a cynic, but I'm a cynic, and I'm a reasonably intelligent and cynical cynic. So, yeah, that doesn't make sense. None of that makes sense. So I went to see the story. I watched the Stu Peters show where he said he ended all of it. He won his court case. He cornered the Crown. It's over. He solved the problem. Everyone across the world should do exactly what Pat King was doing. Subpoena the Crown, subpoena the health minister. And I looked into it very briefly because you can only deal with the information you have at the time. Can't fathom everyone because he doesn't. And I said, now the story doesn't make sense. I looked into saying, first of all, I don't think he even won his case. I don't even think he succeeded on his subpoena. In fact, I believe his subpoena was quashed because it was invalidly issued. In fact, I don't think he even won on his case because it was suspended and postponed and whatever. And then sure enough, he went on another podcast where the guy, I messaged him privately and I said, you did a good job doing it politely and respectfully. Basically got Pat King to admit, I lost my case. I had to pay my ticket. My subpoena was quashed. And they're not lifting the measures in Alberta. And then I started taking shit from his supporters who said, Viva, why would you crush the inspiration? He's out there inspiring. It's like, I don't need inspiration. I need truth. I don't need inspiration. I need truth and I need accuracy. And what I got from that was neither truth nor accuracy. I'm not saying it was a lie. I'm just saying he misunderstood what happened because I believe he did. I believe Stu Peters, maybe he knew better, maybe he didn't. Ran with it because it was just so good and it was so optimistic and so uplifting, but it was wrong. I don't need inspiration. I just need the truth and accuracy. And when I started calling it out, I started getting called, I started feeling flack. That was my intro to Pat King. Then I found out he's involved with the protest and he said some unfavorable things. I don't like any discussion about pure blood. I know people do it in the chat for fun. Hey, Viva got vaxxed. He's not. You talk to me about pure blood. I'm not going to respond to you. I'm not going to block you. You can express your thoughts, but I think that's an idiotic discussion. It's idiotic discourse. And I actually think it's arguably, even conceivably, planted discourse. Because nobody on the conservative right who's for freedom of choice is going to refer to anyone who chose to get vaccinated as unpure blood. Nobody. So that's what I think. He's associated with this protest. They were arrested last week. We all saw it. Tamara Litch, Friday night, a very peaceful arrest. Pat King, and apparently their bail, so their bail was postponed. Tamara Lynch's decision on her bail, because I think they had the hearing over the weekend, the decision was postponed until Tuesday. She was arrested Friday on what was, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, at worst mischief charges, at worst felony mischief. Which at worst, Zot is live, by the way. I just got the notification. If anyone wants to go check out Zot. I'm hearing kids not behaving upstairs. She was arrested on what is at worst felony mischief. And that's a high burden. She was arrested Friday night. Ordinarily, you would be charged, detained within, say, a few hours, maybe 12 hours. Her bail hearing was either held or postponed. But either way, the judgment on her bail hearing was postponed until this morning. So she's been in jail Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night, 4 days on mischief, even if you want to deem it to be felony mischief. And the judge today said, not granting you bail for whatever the reason. Let me just see this here. Just getting here might be known. Couldn't post last message with Trudeau spelled correctly. Interesting. Susan had it again. Well, it depends how you spelt it and what avatars you put in it. I find the intellectual intelligentsia at university is very quiet about all that. Am I wrong? No, well, there's a lefty who are contesting the Emergencies Act, so there's that. Is there any update on Mike Anderson, also known as Pissed Off Trucker on TikTok? He's been a guest. I'll check because I know that I saw him. I interviewed him, I believe. I think I interviewed him at some point. So let me bring it up bigger. Detained on mischief charges because there is a substantial risk you will not abide by an order. Or she could be released on bail, as she should be, and if she breaches that order, then she could be possibly understandably detained. Possibly understandably. I weigh my words on purpose, because I don't think detainment for mischief charges is possibly, conceivably justifiable. But if you say you're released, here are the orders. If you violate them, then we can jail you for contempt, like they did with Pavlovsky, like they did with Arthur Coates, Arthur Pavlovsky, Pastor Coates, and the other one. Maybe. I still think it was abuse. But at the very least, you can understand if they can't get you on the substance, they get you on the process. And this was a quote from the decision. There's a substantial risk you will continue these actions and you will not abide by an order, the judge told Lish. Your recent history in our city satisfies me that your detention is necessary for the safety and protection of the public. So I play the intellectual honesty game. I think it's offensive, obscene, unjustifiable, undemocratic, abusive, and egregious that she's still detained. The only thing I say to myself is, what could she and what could Pat King have possibly done or said that might have justified that decision? Bail hearing, people who are cheering this on and saying, yay, good for you, you are detaining an innocent person. You might think she's guilty, but she is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. So you are detaining a legally innocent person. Yeah. Trudeau spoke about sanctions on Russia for authoritarian policy, yet he's doing the same. I posted a tweet to that. It's like, hey, look at this. This is Putin invading the Ukraine. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. That's Trudeau dealing with peaceful protesters in Ottawa. You can, oh, crap, it was detainment. You can detain someone for violating a court order. And it's understandable because the underlying court order might be totally innocuous. But if they refuse to adhere to the conditions of their release, okay, fine, then you get them on the procedure, but not on the substance. But you are detaining a legally innocent person, and people have to understand that. The reasons for which you detain a legally innocent person have to do with the severity of the accusations, the flight risk, or the risk of what's the word? Recidivity, repeating the crime. So an egregiously violent accusation, although you're technically presumed innocent. Let's just take the Waukesha driver, for example. Well, there's video of it, beginning to end, including arrest. He's legally innocent, although not innocent in my mind, but that's my own bias. Call it what you want. You can arguably detain that individual despite not being convicted yet because of the seriousness of the violence of the act. Ghislaine Maxwell. You could arguably justify the detainment because of a flight risk. You know, she's on serious charges. Some will call them violent, others might not, but they're violent. She might be a flight risk. Her argument was always that if she were a flight risk, she would have flighted a long time ago and not waited to get arrested. Setting that aside, the violence, the flight risk, or the risk of recidivist, committing it again. Send it adjourned. Good, because I don't want to hear that diarrhea anymore. So I just say to myself, what could she possibly have done to justify this order, which I think is shockingly offensive on its face? She could have gotten up before the court, before the judge, she and Pat King, and they have it in their spirit. They have a fighting spirit, like it or not. She could have said, forget you, judge. I'm not going to do a damn thing. You can put whatever conditions you want. I will assure you I am not going to respect them. And then the judge is going to say, well, okay, I have no choice. This is what they did to Pavlovsky, to Coates. I think it was more to Coates, to Pastor Coates than to Pavlovsky. They said, agree not to hold church services. He said, I will not agree to those bail conditions. And they said, I'm sorry, then I can't release you. I think it's abusive. I think it's egregious. I think it's unconstitutional, but I understand the logic. Here are the terms of your release, your bail conditions, $5,000 bond, whatever, and undertake not to hold what we are claiming to be unlawful church services. Coates said no, and they held him for, I think it was a long time. I think it was over 3 weeks. I understand it. I disagree with it, but I understand it. If Tamara Litch said, I will not undertake one thing. I will continue corresponding with other protest members. I will continue corresponding with the convoy. I will continue organizing. I will continue encouraging people to come down on Ottawa. If she said that in open court, I could understand it. I might still disagree with it. I might still say, let her go out and let her do that. And then when you bring her back, you have the moral high ground. I could understand. Same thing with Pat King. So I don't know what was said. And that's all I have to say about that is basically, if that's what she said, I can understand the judge saying, I can't grant you bail. The rationale based on the judge's statements, can't understand it. You pose a risk. I can't be assured you won't repeat. Well, then you release the individual, take their passport, if that's what you want to do to make sure she's not a flight risk. Therefore, if she's a recidivative risk, you can get her back and then you can jail her. And you can say, I told you not to, you did it. And other people out there could say it was an abusive ask in the first place, but you did it. And now you're going to go sit in jail unless you undertake not to do it again. That's not what happened from what I understand. Now, Dave Anber, who's the lawyer in Ottawa representing people now, he came out with a piece and he said, basically, look, it's nuanced and yada, yada. Criminal lawyer, I believe it's here, share. And I believe you're seeing this. He says, my piece in the Newsweek on Tamara Litch being denied bail. We'll bring it up. And I think you're seeing this. A leader of a freedom convoy was denied bail, what it means, what it doesn't. And he has a bit of a nuanced take on this, which I agree with the take, but I disagree with. I understand the take, but I disagree with the underlying point, which is she should have been released and allowed to violate the terms of her release, and then you lock her up, and then you can say, I told her not to do it, and she did it. Not, I fear you're going to do it, therefore I'm not giving you bail. Her new hearing date is March 1st or something. I'm detaining you on mischief charges, whereas drug dealers who lie on their bail terms, I won't deal drugs, I won't commit crimes, so let me go. I think it's outrageous, but I just want to read a couple of passages. Something many seem to be missing is the fact that a bail hearing is not a trial. Trial is guilty or not guilty. Fine. The rules of evidence are concrete, beyond a reasonable doubt or not. Bail, on the other hand, is a very different animal. It does not result in the binary decision making found in a trial, but rather involves balancing of many interests and yada yada. And we've talked about it. The court believes that the accused is likely to not attend court if they believe there's substantial likelihood that the person will continue to break the law, or otherwise. But if their likelihood of breaking the law is mischief charges, that's not serious enough in my view to continue to detain them. It's not enough to continue justifying denying bail. I will recognize Amber has more meaningful professional experience than me. And if you want to defer to the authority between me and Amber is the authority. This is my opinion. And he said, the judge basically said, your counsel, in Tamara Licht's case, the judge detained her on the second and third grounds. You are counseling publicly to continue to occupation. The judge said at the hearing, I cannot be reassured that if I release you, you will not reoffend. That's the bottom line. So Amber is basically saying, she's basically admitting that she's continuing to encourage the allegedly unlawful conduct. And the judge says, I can't be assured that you will not reoffend. My take would have been, release her, let her reoffend, and then you can do it. Not right now. I think it's over the top. But go read the piece from Amber. You may like it and you may not like it. You may agree with it. You may disagree with it. It's a well thought out and well justified piece. And don't anyone start saying Amber has to pussyfoot around satisfying the courts. And yet Amber has been more ballsy and more courageous than any practicing attorney that I know. And I'm not including myself in that because I'm not practicing anymore and I don't have to worry about what a judge thinks about me. Amber is front line offense. and frontline defense. And so don't go because you don't like his conclusion here and say he's controlled opposition. He's just covering his own ass. If he were covering his own ass, he wouldn't be taking these files. If he were covering his own ass, he would not be appearing on my channel talking about it. If he were covering his own ass, he would not be doing what he's doing now. He has a take on this. It's not an untenable take. I just disagree with it, but it is a justifiable, tenable take. And that's it. And so my only thing is, did Pat King basically saying, screw you, F you, I won't do what you tell me. You let me out. The second I get out, I'm going to go continue doing this. They might have said that out of defiance. And then the judge might have, been more justified than less justified in saying, well, then no bail for you. If it were me, it's mischief charges. Let them out. If they cause mischief, you're not detaining them because they're causing mischief. You're detaining them because they're breaching the orders of their release. So I don't know that we're going to actually see the vote tonight. Detention was called. Lish is in DT for protection of public. Detention was called DT. What does DT stand for? Anyhow, bottom line, you know what the funny thing is? We didn't need a January 6th to justify the response. This is our January 6th, not because of the violent protests, but because of the government abuse, the prosecutorial abuse, the abuse of law in all of this. It's over the top in my view. One of my favorite streamers, Spokens Ken, tweeted your rant yesterday when LawTube collides with police scanner chase pot smoking YouTubers. Beautiful. I don't smoke pot, people. Just everybody knows that. I don't. I like the way it smells, but I don't do it. I have nothing against it. I'm just actually shocked that people can actually do that and remain functional human beings. My own 2 cents. Senate is done for the day. So can people in the chat tell me, are we not going to get a vote tonight? Not that I'm encouraged because, actually, you know what? He's out on bail. The guy who ran over 4 protesters, he's out on bail because he promised not to run over any more people. He signed his bail terms. They said, put up $10,000, undertake not to run over any more people. And he said, yes. Pastor Coates said, no, I will not undertake not to hold church services. Wow, I told my wife this was going to be a short stream, and I think I don't hear kids screaming anymore. My mother died of cancer over the summer. We had to pick someone to travel across provincial borders and sit by her. The government has dehumanized people in their inability to be with their loved ones and to mourn the loss of loved ones. That will enrage me. It will enrage me until the day I die. And I just hope that's 60 years from now and not sooner. Although this stress it's an unbearable amount of stress. It has nothing to do with how. Hey Viva, True North just put an article. The judge for Tamara Lich ran as a liberal, endorsed by Trudeau. I have no doubt about that. These judges, in the same way that they're incapable of adjudicating on this because of conflicts of interests, in as much as the judges in Washington, you want to adjudicate on an insurrection that threatened democracy, and you want to be the judge in the city in which that allegedly occurred, and think you're going to be objective. You're not going to be objective. Putin is only declaring the Emergencies Act on Ukrainian truckers. That looks like me tonight, sir. That's me tonight. I love it. Unlawful use of my image. No, I'm joking. I got bail for $2,000 when I was in for 16 arson charges. Dude, what the hell were you doing as a child? Lighting multiple places on fire when I was a dumb young kid. This is mischief. So I think David Amber puts out a decent article that explains the pros and the cons and what's at issue when you're contemplating bail. I can conceive of a circumstance in which Tamara and Pat King basically got in front of the judge's face and said, I won't do what you tell me. Whatever you tell me to do, the second I get out, I'm like Snake out of The Simpsons. The second you let me out here, I'm going to go rob another store. I could picture them saying that, not in malicious ways, but in a righteous indignation way, a righteous defiance way, saying, you let me out, you're not going to tell me who I can talk to, I'm going to do it. And then I can see the judge saying, okay, well, you've left me no choice. I was not there for the hearing. There was no live hearing from what I understood. Almost obstructive. But I can see that happening where the judge could then say, I'm not letting you out. You've left me no choice. I would have said, let him out. Let them do it, and then your hands are clean when you have to do what is ostensibly absolutely unconstitutional and unconscionable. The truck drivers should boycott Ottawa, not one truck. Yeah. You look like a young Don Cherry, sir. Happy curmudgeon. It's a good picture. I actually like your facial hair quite a bit. Thank you very much. I don't encourage, I don't endorse, but you would, everything. All right. Now, with that said, then, are we done? Hold on. Let me just see here. I'm going to get to the bottom if I can get here fast enough. There are I put the chat on 20 seconds, and it's still too much to keep up with. Sorry, guys. Ask yourselves what Western country has spoken out against this action in Canada. The game is afoot, people. America, or at the very least, Tucker Carlson, Fox News. But no, even still, people have been speaking out about it. But it's nice to speak out about it. It's not going to do much. And nor can you do that, which is going to be counterproductive and actually harm the cause more than anything else. I want to get there's a $100 super chat in there. It's not to prioritize. It's just I saw there was a big one in every respect. Parliament and Senate, one politician lying is irksome. An affliction of politicians colluding to deceive is worrisome. I agree with you. A calamity of politicians, simple majority wielding power, openly lying, knowing everyone knows it, is prelude to utter catastrophe. I agree with you. And it's they're lying. We know they're lying. They know we know they're lying. We know they know we know they will. Goes on forever. It's egregious that the amount of people in the Senate, these people are idiots. I mean, I don't mean to be denigrating. These people are liars or they're idiots. And how are they? They're the decision makers now. Appointed, ignorant, or lying decision makers. Comment ID. I read that Trudeau's appointed 52 senators during his lifetime in office. There are 105 senators there. If he appointed 52, then it's done. Yeah, I'm interested to see comments on how many. Yeah. Jason. All right, now I just want to bring up share to bring up one more thing that I know that I haven't brought up yet, which I want to discuss. So that was David Amber's piece. Wikipedia. Oh, the Senate. Let's just go for this. Just for everyone's knowledge. I know you see this. The Senate of Canada, because this is relatively, I won't say new to me. I don't know how this stuff works. The Senate is modeled after. So hold on. I just saw something that made me want to puke in my mouth. Where was it? It'll come up. No. That's what made me want to puke. The Prime Minister of Canada is the first minister of the Crown. The Prime Minister is the head of the government of Canada. Yada, 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 yada. Okay, whatever. The Senate is modeled after the British House of Lords and consists of 105 members appointed by the Governor General on the advice of the Prime Minister. That's basically appointed by the Prime Minister. Seats are assigned, yada, yada, yada. We don't care about that. The approval of both houses is necessary for legislation to become law, and thus the Senate can reject bills passed by the House of Commons. But here's the problem. Between 1867 and 1987, the Senate rejected fewer than 2 bills per year. But this has increased in recent years. Although legislation can be normally introduced in either chamber, the majority of the government bills originate in the House of Commons, with the Senate acting as the chamber of, quote, I love this, sober second thought. And we've heard that sober second thought, and it sounds like hangover thought. It sounds like drunken thought followed by hangover thought, like making no sense, followed by vomiting in the toilet the next morning saying, why did I drink so much Goldschlager? That's what it sounded like. We shall stop sharing this now. And I'm going to close this one. You know what? I realize why I stopped closing them, because I don't want to accidentally close down the stream. That's why I stopped closing them. Remind me not to close them down. So, yeah, look, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. They are accurate when anything they publish runs counter to the narrative. So with the Governor Whitmer, I'm not discussing maritime law, whoever asked that. Oh my God, my back hurts. When they were discussing the 8645, when they say things that are counter to narrative, you know they're honest. Otherwise, fake. So there's that. Sorry, I'm at the bottom of the chat now. Did they suspend for the night? Can someone confirm to me David, if you're watching, I know you are. Did they suspend for the night? Could you confirm that for me? Holy crab apples. Okay, so that's not right. Zoke removed. Oh, someone said Zoke removed, not Zot. That goes back to the channels being shut down. I repeat what I said about that. Someone just said it to. Oh, I won't say this. I'm not sure it's public. By the way, I'm such a vault. I know things that I can't disclose. I have information that I cannot disclose because I'm not that. I won't do it. Let me just see what the the hearing is back on. Well then, hold on one second. Share screen, go to Chrome tab, go to send view. Let me share this and just see what the dealio is. What? I'm going to refresh that. Audio only. No, stop. I don't want them. Oh my goodness, this goes from choosing. No, I think it's over, guys. I think it's over for the day. Stop sharing. And let me just get back to the stream. I haven't eaten dinner yet. My stomach is starting to grumble. Okay, so yeah, let me see. The Senate has left till 9 a.m. tomorrow. Good. So we don't have to worry about that. Then the question is just going to be, let me get to the other subject matters. Oh, okay, so the bail hearing, Tamara is going to be in jail on, at worst, felony mischief, which the judge says carries a very harsh sentence, up to 10 years. And the judge is relatively certain she's going to be convicted. So, whatever. But on the bail hearing, the question is risk to the public, flight risk, recidive risk, and maybe they said something that could justify the judge in saying, look, you've made it clear you're not going to respect my any terms of release, therefore I can't release you. Fine, I would have released them anyhow, let them breach it, and arrest them again. They had no problem doing that to Pavlovsky. I love hearing your thoughts, but your wife must be getting real credit. She's getting real red-pilled. That's the problem. Stupid idea. Can we ask the Queen to veto an emergency? I don't know. I've heard people say that. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that works. Yeah, someone just said, oh my God, 10 years. Mischief, 10 years. Felony mischief, maximum 10 years. This is a January 6th, by the way. This is a January 6th. Not because of the violence of the protest, but because of the violence of the prosecutorial misconduct, the government overreach, the government overreaction. This is the most expensive investigation in the history of Canada. Bullshit. Sorry. I don't have religious parents that bullshit. And you fabricate the crisis so you can appeal to the crisis. Thank you very much. No, hold on. Someone just said here, I got to find the arrows. Here we go. Trudeau's, he wanted a January 6th in violence. He didn't get that until the police showed up. Now he got his January 6th in terms of government abuse, government overreach, prosecutorial misconduct, in my humble opinion, and absolute prosecutorial abuse and judicial abuse. They've arrested organizers of a federally registered, not-for-profit, not on the basis of fraud, because part of me is sitting here saying, okay, fine. I don't know Tamara Lich from a hole in the wall. I didn't know Ben Dichter from a hole in the wall before I interviewed him. I don't know the organizers. Maybe this was a massive Ponzi fraud scheme. They're like, yeah, guys, donate. We got $10 million. We're going to pocket. Maybe it was fraud. They haven't been charged on tax fraud. They haven't been charged on charity fraud. They've been charged on any fraud. They've been charged on mischief. Because if it was fraud, I would feel aggrieved. I donated because I wanted to help the truckers whose lives have been ruined for the last 2 years. I wanted to help them make ends meet. I didn't want to support fraud. If it was fraud, so be it. Charge them for it. They're not even being charged for fraud. They're being charged on mischief because their protest was disruptive, and the people who donated to this federally registered not-for-profit to support truckers whose lives have been interrupted and destroyed, they wanted to support them. the mischief is now what gave grounds to the seize or the restraint on property, offense-related property. They didn't even need to have a January 6th to react as though it were a January 6th, because they got the media bought and paid for, and they just had to fabricate a January 6th, get their buffoons in the House of Commons to repeat lies, their buffoons in the Senate to repeat the lies. I walked to work. I'm not muted. I'm not muted. Am I muted? Am I muted? I'm not muted. Government. Okay. Tell me if I'm muted. I'm not muted. Okay. So with that said, now let me just see. There were a couple of windows that I had open. Share screen, Chrome tab. During the elections, that was okay. So I'm going through it. Human rights, federally incorporated. If they want to try to go after the protesters, not the protesters, sorry, the donors to a federally incorporated not-for-profit, arguably entrapment, insidious entrapment. Remember the argument. Justin Trudeau demonizing rebel media, turning his chin to Alexa Lavoie, and then his RCMP shooting her in the leg point blank with a tear gun canister. Why do they have tear gas? By the way, a tear gas gun canister. Why do they have tear gas at this protest? Okay, that was the third point. Detained on mischief. This is Tamara Lich being denied bail on mischief charges. That was the third point. Then I had an article. We don't need to read it. Michael Strahl saying that a donor who donated $50 had her bank account frozen but is not providing details. Skepticism. David Amber's take. Fine. And now, the final piece of the evening. I believe I was defamed by W5 CTV. For those of you who don't know, they ran a piece Saturday night, which I didn't realize I was going to be a tool in their vehicle to try to defame and besmirch and demonize Rumble as some far-right platform. They came to my house. They set up their dollies. They set up everything to interview me. We spent an hour and a half with Kevin Newman. They only used a few minutes, which is a shame. But in the final piece Saturday night, Kevin Newman said, in an attempt to use me as a vehicle to demonize and defame Rumble, said, Viva Frei. Or he said, David Freiheit. I don't care about mispronouncing my last name, period. But if we had been in touch, and if you're going to like interview me for an hour and a half and talk about me and make a well-produced hit piece, just pronounce it right out of respect when you're disrespecting me, but whatever. David Freiheit, who's had videos, plural, pulled from YouTube, challenged by Facebook, but Rumble didn't even touch it. And I'm sitting there watching and saying, lie, lie, and lie. I messaged them and I tweeted out and I said, that's a lie. Please correct and retract. And they said, we'll look into it. And then I got an email saying, we've corrected it. Listen to how they corrected this. Here we go. Boom. You get the intro part too. Just let's go. It's glorious. Watch again. Ooh, what did I just do? Audio. You got to hear the melancholic guitar. Defamation coming now. Pulled down by YouTube. Challenged by Facebook. Never touched. This is Kevin Newman. Please, sir. Pause, please, right now. I'm at my friend's house. That's not our
Kevin, that's false and defamatory, and here's why.
Here's why.
I have had exactly one video pulled from YouTube.
Alex Jones.
But it was reinstated. It was the Alex Jones deposition
and
where I broke down and explained Alex Jones's deposition from that
bear
lawyer.
With me and just watch this.
YouTube initially demonetized it, then pulled it from YouTube for allegedly violating their terms of service as relates to hate speech, which I challenged, and then YouTube miraculously reinstated and remonetized. So Kevin Newman, if you're going to say that I had a video pulled from YouTube, you might want to add the small salient fact that it was reinstated and remonetized. As far as Facebook goes, as far as I know, I've never had one video challenge on Facebook.
Never.
And that might explain why on Rumble I have not had one issue with any video. Because even on YouTube, on my main channel, in the history of my 7 years, 2,300 and something videos, I have had one video pulled and it was reinstated and remonetized. So Kevin Newman, you do good journalism. I'd like you to correct that, retract that, and I won't even ask for an apology.
I didn't ask for an apology.
Correct and retract, please.
Now listen to this. This is what I got by email. See, Thank you. As responsible journalists, this is what we've done.
Thank you. Back to this piece.
This is what they did.
It doesn't matter.
Remember what you heard. Remember what you heard in the original broadcast. This is the digital version.
Freiheit had a video removed from YouTube, which was later reinstated on appeal, but never touched on a platform that's become home to right-wing watchers called Rumble.
Can we appreciate that? Can we appreciate that this was a hit piece on Rumble, the underlying accusation of which was providing misinformation? And this piece itself provided misinformation. And then when called out to correct and retract, instead resorted to a stealth edit with neither a correction nor a retraction, a stealth edit to the digital version, which will have zero impact on the televised version. And what do they say? Originally, they said Viva Frei, who's had videos, multiple, pulled from YouTube, multiple, challenged by Facebook, but never by Rumble. Lie, lie, lie. One video, reinstated, remonetized, none challenged by Facebook. And by the way, the kicker in the teeth for W5 CTV, Kevin Newman, I only uploaded the Alex Jones deposition to Rumble in November 2020 or 2020. I only uploaded that one a year and a half after it was reinstated on YouTube. So there would have never been anything for Rumble to verify or to have an obligation to verify in that video, which was pulled and reinstated on YouTube. But this is how they cover up their lies and deceit. Stealth edits. And then someone on Twitter was like, well, didn't they do what you asked? No, they didn't. A stealth edit to the digital version with no specific correction and retraction from the broadcast version is strictly useless. The people who watched it on TV are not going to see the digital YouTube version. They're going to be left with the lies, defamatory misinformation that W5, CTV, and Kevin Newman leveled against me in a piece that they were using to accuse Rumble of misinformation. So other than, by the way, I still consider it a win because they've just admitted their wrongdoing, but they didn't correct it, which might be a double win for me because it's a double wrong for them. I've asked them, I've emailed, we'll see what happens. You'll know. Next episode of W5 next Saturday night, because the people who watch W5 on a Saturday night are not paying attention to YouTube, they better make sure that they clarify. In our, here, I'll script it for you, Kevin Newman, if you're watching, W5, CTV. In our original broadcast, we wrongly suggested that Viva Frei, David Freiheit, you can pronounce my name right, David Freiheit, had several videos pulled from YouTube or challenged by Facebook. In fact, that statement was factually incorrect. David Freiheit has never had any videos challenged by Facebook, and he had exactly one video pulled by YouTube, which was subsequently reinstated about 18 months before that same video was published on Rumble. That's how you could say it. If you want to borrow my words, I won't even charge you for that legal advice, because that is legal advice. You better, on your W5, issue a proper correction and a proper retraction that, notwithstanding what we said last week, David Freiheit has never had multiple videos pulled from YouTube and challenged by Facebook. It was a mistake. We apologize. We will do better in the future. And do better than a stealth edit to a digital version and try to play me like a buffoon. Okay, with that said, I'm not in the business of suing. And if they don't do it, what damages? They're just proving why they are fake news liars. That's all they're doing. He's had videos pulled by YouTube and challenged by Facebook. No. Do your damn research before you try to turn me into a vehicle to defame another entity. You are the misinformation you accuse others of. W5, CTV, Kevin Newman. And the only thing you can do right now is either save face or potentially mitigate your damages. What are my damages? I don't know. I would go for nominal damages. Because what you did will leave any elderly person who watches on television, I'm not trying to be mean or demographically targeted here. We know which demographics watch television on a Saturday night. I don't even have television connected in my house anymore. So just do that. That's all I ask. And then we have no problem. Kevin Newman, CTV, W5. I'm going to clip this and put it as a highlight on my second channel, Viva Clips. Okay. But I guess it's a sign of having made it when legacy media tries to run a hit piece on you. And by the way, that's the best they could do. I spoke with Kevin Newman for an hour and a half in my living room, and that's the best they got on me. Yep, it's good to be honest. If you have integrity, nothing else matters. And if you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. That about does it, I think, everyone, for the evening. Let me just screen share. So I mean that about does it. Why do I see this thing in my screen which I don't like? Okay, it went away. They are facilitating the misinformation in the government. There's no question about that. And then they wonder. They accused me of live streaming without a filter, and they thought that was a bug and not a feature. Yeah, I live stream without a filter. If I saw a Yahtzee flag or a Confederate flag, I wouldn't have edited it out. When I saw the graffiti, which was like red, looked like lipstick on a monument, I went up to it because that was it. No filter, good or bad, no filter. So yeah, that's it. This has been a magnificent look. So we'll see what the vote is tomorrow. I'm sick to my stomach. I'm telling you this sincerely. I know someone who's watching who emailed me and said, Viva, if I could detect correctly, I thought you were on the verge of tears last night. I am, and I'm struggling to keep my own optimism because I cannot project optimism if I do not feel optimism. And I don't feel optimism these days. I thought the House of Commons would have not a good conscience. I'm not trying to shame them. I thought they would have the good sense, the moral decency, and the intellectual honesty to call it what it was. Yes, it was a nuisance. It was loud for the first 4 days. It was an inconvenience. It was a disruptive protest. It was not an insurrection. It was not overthrowing the government. It was not a siege. It was not an occupation. Nobody was running around threatening, assaulting people with face masks. No one was intimidating people with face masks. No one from the convoy was defecating on residential property front porches. Nobody. And when they start getting out there and saying that, it's collective lying at the highest level of government, and it's an absolute stomach-turning disgrace. Okay, well, maybe I should. Maybe next year, there will be another little baby Viva Frei. We see. No, we'll see. But so I'm not optimistic. I'm sick to my stomach. I'm distressed. I'm upset. I haven't eaten dinner. I'm going to go eat dinner after this. But we'll see. The Senate can save the semblance of decency in Canadian politics. And then even if they don't, because I'm not optimistic, hold on. Oh, that was the wrong side. I already did that side. Even if they don't, nobody heard anything. Even if they don't, there are court challenges. The court can come and save this. Even if they don't, I think it's an absolute shocking, disgusting outrage that the government would freeze bank accounts of the truckers who participated, promoted, or parked their cars in this protest on Wellington. I think that's a shocking outrage. It's an abuse of due process. It's an abuse of it's an abuse all around. You want to arrest them, charge them, make them post some sort of bond for damages? Go ahead. Trying to starve hardworking people who have already been starved virtually to death in the first place, that drove them to this desperation. You want to crush them a little more? Shocking and horrifying. And I'm not saying that horrifying to be verbose, hyperbolic, or lofty. It's horrifying. You freeze truckers' bank accounts because they parked their cars on Wellington for 3 weeks? Who did that disrupt except for Parliament? But it didn't even disrupt Parliament because you guys got to office, because you have a backdoor entrance and everybody knows about it. But no, go ahead. Forget due process. Forget liability. Forget responsibility. Immunize your henchmen to freeze with liability. Immunity from civil liability. That's not justice. That is injustice. Otto Warmbier, who was convicted by the North Korean courts, he had a trial. And it was as much of a joke of justice as this. It might even be less of a joke, because at least he had a trial before he was sentenced to 13 years hard labor for stealing what are the things when you get a memorabilia? for stealing something from a government hotel. At least he had a trial before he was sentenced to 13 years. Trudeau and his liberal government didn't even waste time with the trial. Just seize it, starve them, destroy them, crush them, because they parked their cars on Parliament Hill and embarrassed you for 3 weeks. But everyone else, I'm not going to, anyone who has definitive evidence that someone had a bank account frozen strictly for donating to the charity, strictly for donating to the registered not-for-profit, I want to see it, and I will rage about it, and I will make it public, and I will make it known. Until then, the tweet from that guy, I want to believe it, but I will believe it only when I see the evidence. Okay. What else? So we'll see. Look, I'll come back tomorrow. We have a sidebar tomorrow night with Barnes. I actually forget who it is, and I apologize for that. There's too many things going on, but I'll see if I can go live tomorrow during the Senate vote. Despite everything that I've been doing here, tremendous amount of stuff going on in the background, literally and spiritually, that is also exquisitely stressful, but no rest for the wicked. And you can't ignore the revolution as it's happening, and you cannot give it as much sunlight as it deserves, as it needs. It has to happen. I was on Steve Bannon War Room this afternoon and this morning. I'm going to do my best to go on international platforms to shed the light. But other than that, I've already had one, Mark. I'll have another one, but I've already had one. It's atrocious. Can they prevent stop the vote by not having quorum? I don't know. I'd have to look. I don't know. So that's it. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for everything. Clip whatever you want. Share whatever you want, wherever you want. Please do it. It is more important that this gets out. No copyright asserted. Go. Yeah. And I'm not worried for myself. I have my irrational fears, and then I have my rational fears. My irrational fears are that they'll try to freeze my bank account because of my donation prior to the Emergencies Act declaration to a registered not-for-profit with a stated objective that was approved by the government that I approved of. That's my irrational fear. Then every fear hides a wish. Let them do it. You have any idea what would happen if they start doing that? If they thought this was bad publicity, to actually start freezing bank accounts of Streisand effect, to say that. But then what they're doing already is absolutely over the top in and of itself. They're using the Emergencies Act as a prospective measure, not as a reactionary measure. And that is, you don't have to be a senator or a member of parliament to know that that is not what it was for. Irrational fears are those. Rational fears, I am witnessing my country disintegrate before my very eyes. That's my rational fear. And I'm watching a lot of the people who I know are, I won't say reasonable, because I don't think they're being reasonable right now. I know a lot of people who I have liked, who I've known well for years, saying, fuck them. I don't like those truckers. All right. See what happens the next time daycare professionals want to protest for better conditions, better air quality. See what happens the next time unionized workers want to protest. See what happens the next time Black Lives Matter wants to protest. You do it. Just don't do it the way the government doesn't like, because they'll seize your bank accounts. Indigenous protesters, I had no problem with the protests. I had no problem with the court getting an injunction. I had an issue with the authorities not enforcing the injunction. There was never a question of calling in the Emergencies Act. There was never a question of freezing their bank accounts in the absence of a trial. And by the way, if I ever am a hypocrite, call me out and soundbite what I said to what I'm saying. If I ever do that. Okay. Sandra McElroy, Sandy's friendly feathered friend. Thank you very much. And by the way, like it's amazing. We're watching it also in America, dismantling freedoms under the guise of your protection. All right, go tune into Zot. Zot's live. I think Zoke is live. And someone just said prayers, Viva. Don't pray for me. I don't need prayers. Prayer for Canada and prayers for humanity. This is not hyperbolic. People, you're giving the government carte blanche to extrajudicially freeze banks. Let's just say what it is. Starve people out of home and starve people to death. The people in that convoy, but for their network and community, cannot buy food, cannot buy medication, cannot pay their mortgages, cannot pay rent. That's what they're doing. No court order, no due process, and immunizing the banks for having done it. I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is or what they're accused of. That is not any form of justice. That is not any form of free and democratic society. And you think you get a conviction against somebody who you've deprived of raising funds for a defense, and you think that's a legitimate conviction? You may as well acquit them. Okay. Dude, what's going on with the sound? The sound is not off. With that said, hope for the best, plan for the worst. I'm not happy and I'm not optimistic with the way I see Canada going. If the Senate votes the way these parrots look like they're going to vote, you've got court challenges. The JCCF is doing God's work. You've got Brian Peckford challenging the federal mandates. You've got civil rights liberties, whatever, civil rights associations filing suit. I don't have faith in the courts either. What I do hope is that people are waking up to what's going on. This is not a Canada that anyone can tolerate. It's not because you don't like these people that you can tolerate injustice against them. If you tolerate injustice against people you hate, it is only a matter of time before you will be tolerating injustice against people that you do not hate. And it's only a matter of time before you will be the object of that injustice. And then someone right behind you is saying, ha, 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 I hate you, so you get what you deserve. So think about that. Thank you all for the super chats. Thank you all for the support. Thank you for everything. Share, clip, share, and share. And with that said, stay tuned for another short notice live stream. We might have one tomorrow. We have a sidebar tomorrow night. And I'm going to eat dinner and then say hi to my wife. Thank you all. Have a good night.